Welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Friday, everybody. And you guys know what that means. We end every week here in the offseason with a Friday free-for-all mailbag where we get to answer our daily listeners' questions. And now that it's the offseason, we answer a wide range. Obviously, we talk about Notre Dame football, college football, but we'll sneak in the occasional food question or history question in there as well. We like to cover a bunch of different topics. Covered a lot already this week so far, Brian. I mean, we had the buy, sell, hold. We talked about offensive breakouts and 2027 quarterbacks to keep your name on, to 2027 quarterback names to keep your eye out for. And obviously, there's going to be a lot more of that as the offseason progresses. And believe it or not, March starts on Sunday. And so spring practice is also going to be here before you know it as well. So a lot of different things going on. But if you are new and this is your first ever mailbag, you can put MB for mailbag or a little mailbox emoji. That lets us know to get your question set aside and we can answer it as the show goes on. And like always, super chats get bumped to the top. So, Brian, I know we have some start in there already, man. We love us some Friday free-for-all mailbags.
We do, man. I'm looking forward to this. And we do have a super chat to get us kicked off here right at the beginning from our guy, Tyler Evans, who I still feel bad about. I feel like we shamed him into doing a super chat last week, and I feel really bad about that, man. It was just an observation, I promise. We greatly appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you, Tyler. Which quarterback competition is more important to their team this year, Tennessee or Bama, and who wins the job at both?
I mean, obviously they're big at both, but if I were to have to say which one is the most important, I would probably go with the Battle at Tennessee. And the reason I would go with the Battle at Tennessee, Trev, is because I think the play of their quarterback is more important to their success than even the play of the quarterback at Alabama. I also feel like Alabama is in a bit of a win-win in their quarterback battle. I like Austin Mack a lot. I like Keelan Russell a lot. I kind of feel like with that one, it's kind of like how I felt about the Kenny Minchie, CJ Carr battle last year. It's like whoever wins is going to be a dude. Because for you to beat out that other guy, you've got to be pretty good. And honestly, that's why I'm higher on Alabama this year than I was last year. I think their offensive line upgraded through the portal. Now, I think they upgraded their offensive line coaching, I believe, with some offseason staff moves. And now it's about, okay, get those offensive linemen to protect and open holes for a pretty talented quarterback, whoever it is, a talented receiving core and a talented running back room. I felt like Alabama's play calling and offensive line were their detriments last year. Ty Simpson's a nice player, but Ty Simpson's a guy that I view as like kind of the ultimate game manager. He needs a clean pocket. He needs a good situation. Trev, you and I talked several times last year during Bama games. Like, he's got that look in his eye again. And it never was about big games because there were certain big games. He was great against Georgia. He wasn't getting pressured against Georgia. It was about when he was starting to get some consistent pressure, he did not handle that very well at all. So that was more of my issue with Ty Simpson. I don't know that I ever watched a game where it was a big moment and I felt like Ty Simpson was cowering to the moment. I felt he would always kind of cower a little bit to the relentless pressure he faced. So I feel like Bama's biggest issue is not quarterback. It's the offensive line. If that gets worked out, I think Bama's going to be very good again this year. Hey, let me rephrase. I think they're going to actually be good this year. Don't think they were good last year. On offense, I'm referring to. Tennessee, however, to me, is they're more quarterback driven. Their system needs a quarterback to be highly productive more so than does Alabama's, in my opinion. Now, they're both important, but we've seen it, Trev, when they're – you know what it is? They're sort of like the modern air raidish version of Navy, meaning when they've got a good quarterback, they're really good. When they don't, they struggle on offense. Like, they're super dependent on their quarterback. And I just think this battle is important. They need somebody to step up and win and thrive. I personally think it's going to be George McIntyre, but the freshman has a shot to win it. I just like George McIntyre coming out. The big key for him is he's got to add some good weight and strength. His play strength was not the greatest, but I really did like him coming out of high school. At Alabama, I don't know who's going to win it. If I had to lean towards it, I would assume they're going to kind of go with the more veteran guy early. That would be Austin Mack. and then kind of maybe bring Keelan Russell along. But I think Keelan's going to get plenty of opportunities this spring and fall camp to win that job, because obviously they're very high on Austin Mack. They brought him with them from Washington. Like, they clearly like him a lot. I just think it's one of those things, man, where if Keelan Russell, if the light goes on for Keelan Russell, he's going to be hard to keep off the field. He's a really talented quarterback. Really talented quarterback.
Yeah, he is. The quarterback competition down in Tuscaloosa is going to be very interesting. I'm actually a little torn on this. My gut says I kind of lean towards Alabama a little bit. By and large, I think some former past teams with Josh Heupel in the past have been very quarterback driven. I think back to the year where they had Hendon Hooker and they had that insane offense with Jalen Hyatt. But, then Tennessee also made the playoffs with Nico at quarterback, who
with really, a bad offense.
Yeah.
That ran the ball the whole – I mean, they couldn't score. That was their problem.
Yeah, 100%. And so I'm a little torn on this. Big picture, I'm probably going to say Alabama, because I think more eyes are going to be on Alabama and Kalen DeBoer this upcoming season than what will be on Josh Heupel in Tennessee. Because of Alabama's emphatic exit to the playoffs, I think they really need to make a home run with whoever. Now, to Brian's point, I think whoever they choose at quarterback is going to be better than what Ty Simpson was last year. But I think the style of their offense now is more dictated by quarterback play, because until proven otherwise, Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb have zero desire to run the football. Now, they brought in a new offensive line coach. I would assume you bring him in because you want to establish more of a presence on the ground. And maybe this is going to be some sort of correction for Kalen DeBoer in that offense. But until proven otherwise, I'm going to say Alabama, not by a wide margin, only because their offense is solely based on the performance of their quarterback right now.
The difference for me is, I think we saw last year that Alabama can be a playoff team where their offense is a driver with a kind of mediocre quarterback. Tennessee can't. But I think the point that I definitely agree on, Trev, is you are absolutely correct that the spotlight will absolutely be brighter on that battle in Tuscaloosa. No question about it. No question about it. All right. Hey, real quick, this is from Aaron Valerio. He says, BD, just watched the Crane and Company video. You definitely won, by the way. How do you view On 3 overall as a site? I think it's kind of the question. Real quick. I was told today that the voting is going to go until 3:00. So if you have not watched the video and voted on it, please do so. I would greatly appreciate that. I'm going to put the link in the show to the show here real quick. But all you got to do is just go in there and say "Go Irish" or say Brian won, or whatever the case may be. If you think I won, and I think that I did, I think I made the better points. Trev does, but I don't know that Trev would tell me if he didn't think I won. But sorry, boss, you got smoked. But anyway, you can still vote on that. I just put the link in the chat box down there. You can still click on that, but I appreciate that. How do I view On 3 overall as a site? I think On 3 has hired some very talented people whose jobs I respect. Obviously, Crane and Company is a group. I actually, honestly, I'll be real with you. I thought about not going on their show anymore because they're now affiliated with On 3. I did. But at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I get along with those guys personally. They had to make a business decision for them. Going on an On 3 show doesn't, necessarily mean that I'm endorsing On 3 as an entity, because I don't. I despise what their business model is about. And their business model to me is not about, it's not about, I don't know why it's doing that, Trev, why it won't just automatically take it. So I just clicked it over. Thanks for the heads up on that. But I just think it's more about clickbait than it is about real news and real analysis. And they've leaned hard into that model. And so I just don't really support what they do. I think they've got a lot of money. They've got a lot of big backers. They've been able to just kind of buy up in other entities. They bought up rivals. They just bought sites from, just kind of paid a lot of money to get sites over. And you just look at what sites that used to be really good and with analysis and news and integrity that are now just pure clickbait trash. And I'm not saying any sites specifically because I don't want to get into that fight, but that's just the reality of it. But there's also some people they hired that I have a great deal of respect for. Nationally and like the Notre Dame side. Trev, you've heard me talk about Kyle Kelly, who I have a great deal of respect for. Think the world of Kyle as a person, and almost hired him. It was between him and Ryan Roberts, and it was a tough decision. I wish I had I wish our business was in a place then that it is now, where I could have maybe hired both of them. But but as a business entity, I don't like it. I mean, I know for a fact I've talked to different people that work there, like they have to put the predictions up. There was a time it's like, even if there's like, well, there's no new predictions. Yeah, put one up. So I just don't have a lot of respect for it. I don't think we're in an era now, Trev, where truth and integrity doesn't matter a whole lot. We had a question in the chat that I won't answer, but it was about, who are the 3 biggest grifters? And I was like, dude, I couldn't even name 30. I couldn't even stop at 30, because unfortunately podcasting and news breaking and all that has been more about playing to an emotional base, as opposed to delivering the news, delivering analysis, and then just let it be. Now it's like, I've got to play to a side. I've got to play to an angle. I've got to talk about this. I got to play to this crowd because they click on a lot of stuff. And I despise that. And I think On3 is one of the entities that does that. Does that mean that everyone that works on On3 is that way? Nope. It's not the case. But it's just like not every person that works at Fox is good or bad. Not everybody that works at CNN is good or bad. Not everybody that works at MSNBC is good or bad, or CBS or ABC or whatever. Like, it's just the model of the business is one that I just don't like, don't support, and don't have a lot of respect for, to be completely honest with you. So that's my opinion of On3 overall. They could change. They could say, hey, you know what? Let's go in a different direction. It'd be great. But right now they're the biggest game in town right now. So what's their desire to change? Because what they do that I despise makes money. That's why people grift, right? Why do people grift? And when you talk about like political shows, left or right, why do they do the grifting thing? Because it makes money. That's why. It makes money. There's certain topics right now. You talk about this topic right now, you're going to make money because people are going to watch. It's pretty gross, to be honest with you. And we're not going to be that way. And we'll never obviously be affiliated as a business with that. And I just, I can't get that. So appreciate the question. Let's get back to the top, Trev, and we will kick things off with Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker.
Who will be the first person in the first fan base you will talk trash to when Notre Dame wins a national title?
Probably whoever they beat. But honestly, my thing when they win a title will more so be about just being excited about them winning a title. It'll be focused on Notre Dame. It won't immediately be like, let me go tell all of you this. But yeah, it'll be whoever they have to play leading up to that title game, because those will be the fan bases that talk the most trash. Whoever they play in the quarters, whoever they play in the semis, whoever they play in the championships, we'll have a fan base that for weeks will just do nothing but trash talk Notre Dame. And, just like we did with Georgia fans last year, just like we did with Penn State fans last year. Like, you talk all this trash, and then to watch your team get smacked in one game and then choke another game away, and like, okay, there you go. So that's where I'm at. And somebody said OSU because that's all my coworkers. Well, you can only really talk trash to Ohio State fans if you beat Ohio State on the way. Because if you win a title and you didn't beat Ohio State, they can say, well, you still haven't beaten us, and we won it just 2 years ago anyway, so we don't care. Hopefully that's why I always say, every time somebody asks me what's the ideal path to a championship, Ohio State's got to be in there somewhere, in my opinion. But it'll be more so celebrating the win than talking trash to the teams that they just beat. And then I'll probably spend the rest of the offseason just having fun picking at Miami and USC fans.
Yeah.
That'll probably how it'll go.
Yeah. After I wipe the tears away from my eyes and I celebrate for quite some time, and after I go to the store with national champs written across my forehead, it's a tie, honestly, between SEC homers and USC fans. It'll be a tie between those two. And I honestly might keep a tally mark of who I'm going after to make sure that it's evenly split for every USC fan I talk trash to, I'll make sure that I reciprocate for SEC homers. That'll probably be my list.
Yeah. The SEC fans, I can't wait to see the circles and pretzels they twist themselves into to try to somehow justify why Notre Dame's championship doesn't mean anything.
No, it's going to be
and
great.
This is something you talked about yesterday, Trev, that I think is appropriate to this point. And if we're being like serious about this answer, but like in a 4-team playoff, it was a lot easier to talk trash about Notre Dame if they would have won a title, or even a 2-team playoff, like back in the old BCS era, because you could have just explained away, well, yeah, but you didn't belong in because of this, and so got left out. That number 5 team would have smoked you anyway. Georgia at number 5 would have smoked. Now it's like in 12-team playoff, it's like you got to win at least 3 games. And there's no more like, well, excusing away. Like nobody talks about how soft Indiana's schedule was this past year. Why? Because it became irrelevant with the moment they destroyed Alabama, destroyed Oregon, and then beat Miami.
Yep.
It became irrelevant. And then also, by the way, beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. I mean, so in the last 4 games of the year, they beat Ohio State, Alabama, Oregon, and Miami. And so now it's like it doesn't matter. You know, it's why people don't talk as much about Michigan's soft schedule in 2023. Number one, they talk about the cheating. But number 2, it's like it stopped mattering the minute they beat Bama and beat Washington to win the title. They had to win those games. But at least Michigan also had to go win the Big Ten championship over Purdue. But now it's like, okay, you win it now, and you've got to knock off an SEC team, a Big Ten team, or whoever. It's harder to do that without looking like an idiot.
Yeah.
Like you'd look like an idiot now blaming it, saying, well, Indiana didn't belong. Well, yeah, they kind of did. They went 12-0. They beat Oregon and beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. They belonged. We could discuss the merits of playing a softer schedule and why that's not appropriate. And it's bad for the game and all that kind of stuff. But you can't sit there and say that Indiana doesn't belong. Like they scheduled their way into a title. No. They scheduled their way into the playoffs, then earned a title by beating the teams that they beat, including Ohio State. Because if they lose to Ohio State, who knows what their path looks like? Maybe it's not as easy. Maybe they get knocked out. Maybe if they lose to Ohio State, they say your schedule is so soft that we're bumping you down behind this team, and this team. Who knows? But they handled their business. And so now it's like, well, now more teams are following their lead. Let's schedule our way into the playoffs.
Yep.
And you better hope that your team is as good as Indiana's was if you're going to do that. Because there are other teams that have done that. And Texas Tech did that. And look what happened to them. Indiana did that the year before, and look what happened to them.
From Buellsfeld Financial Services, which game will be night games? Miami and
JP, that's a great question. Trev, you have a thought on that? Because I've been kind of back and forth on this. What are your thoughts?
I would be surprised if BYU isn't. I think it'll either be like the noon kickoff game on Fox or it'll be a night game. I could very much see that. Outside of those two, I'm struggling to kind of find another one.
It'll be one of 2 for the home game. It'll either be Stanford or Michigan State for the 2 home games. My guess, based on history, is that Stanford will be a night game. And that's just kind of what they've done. They've taken that middle of the year West Coast game against USC or Stanford and made that a night game. I think there might be some more appealingness to the Michigan State game. That's just my 2 cents. But Miami and then one of those 2. When it comes to road games, Trev, I mean, reality is any of them could. Well, Wisconsin will be. That'll be a 7. It's on Sunday. That'll be a 7:30 game. The Sunday game's always at 7:30. So I imagine that'll be a night game. The others, like Purdue, North Carolina, Syracuse, I would expect all of those to be earlier in the day, but there's a chance, depending on the rest of the week, that I've seen them bump the Notre Dame Purdue game tonight when Notre Dame's really good.
Yeah.
I've seen them bump that up to night games. It just depends on who's carrying. If it's a Fox game, then there's a chance they may want to make it noon. They like to make big games noon or money games noon, but I think Wisconsin for sure. Trev, I think to your point, I think BYU's, there's a good chance that game will be at night. And then I would imagine the Navy game will be an afternoon game as well.
Or or at least nighttime our time. Like they might kick off at 5:30 p.m. out there, but it'll be 7:30 our time or something.
For the BYU game?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, agree.
I mean, at least I'm hoping that it's not an 8:30 or 8 kickoff their time and it's 10 p.m. our time.
I don't see that kind of marquee game drawing that late of a kickoff.
I just
would be surprised by that.
Keep my fingers crossed that it's not.
Yeah, that would surprise me a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, let's go here.
From Trev's Buy, Sell, Hold Glasses. Okay, we got a movie question in here. Buy, Sell, Hold. Remember the Titans, Any Given Sunday, Friday Night Lights, the movie.
I love the people that want to try to do questions on Buy, Sell, Hold Day and then Buy, Sell, Holds on Mailbag Day. But because you picked, here's my thing. I have to hold Friday Night Lights because I never saw it. I'm selling Any Given Sunday because I hated that movie. And the reason I hated that movie is because I feel like they took every negative stereotype about professional football and put it onto one team and made it seem like everybody on an NFL team is either addicted to painkillers, a cokehead, a serial adulterer, all these different things. And it's like, are there guys like that? Absolutely, there are guys like that. But you talk to anybody in the NFL to say, like, that's a smaller clique. And I think everybody thinks every NFL team is like the Cowboys. No, the Cowboys were abnormally nuts back in the 90s. I had a buddy who played for the Chargers for several years. He was San Diego. He's like, dude, he played back with Junior Seau and Ryan Leaf. And he was like, we had our guys like that, some younger guys that he's like, but most of us we went home to our wives and our families and we just would do things in our community. And we weren't really into that, that kind of scene, but they make it out to be like it's this. And I just think it's like low hanging fruit. And there just were, what I have said about that movie is that's probably the most realistic movie from when you show the angle of what it looks like as a player, just the intensity, the speed of everything flying around you is probably the closest you'll ever get to that. But I thought overall that movie sucked. And I'm definitely buying Remember the Titans. It's a tremendous movie. Not only is it a great movie with great acting, but it's a great message. It's based on a true story. Not everything in there is true, but it's based on a true story. Gary Bertier was, in fact, a great high school player who did, in fact, have the injury he had. Lucius Campbell. A lot of those guys were actual players. Not every single storyline was the same. And actually, when I was coaching at CNU, Herman Boone came to speak to our team. Did not, he's not an older Denzel. Let's just put it that way. He's much shorter, very different, kind of guy. But it was very cool meeting him. But Remember the Titans is a tremendous movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy Remember the Titans, hold Friday Night Lights, and then I'm also selling Any Given Sunday. I understand the famous part of that movie was Al Pacino's speech in the locker room. I get that, and it was a good speech, and you hear it a lot on football hype videos and stuff. But outside of that, I thought the movie was just okay. So we have the same order. I'm with you.
That speech was good. I mean, with every movie, there's going to be some stuff. That speech was good. Yeah, that speech was good. All right, let's go. We had another one that was kind of related to movies, Trev. This is from Aaron Valeria. It says, how do you feel about Rudy as a movie, and does it deserve the hate for being somewhat inaccurate? Obviously, there's a lot of that. This didn't happen, that didn't happen. I was like, you know what, man? Some people just take stuff way too seriously. It doesn't take away from – it was a great movie, in my opinion. Like, genuinely great movie. I don't need every true story that's not based on, like, war or something like that to be like spot on. This is exactly how it happened. And, okay, great. They didn't all put the jerseys on the table, but it added to the movie. I don't need it to have happened. It added to the movie. You know what I mean? Like, it was a cool scene. So I just think some people are haters and they like to tear things down. And I don't think I've heard that Rudy Rudiger's the real guy is, a different kind of, I just leave it at that. You know what I mean? Like, but you know what? It's like, it's still a great story, whether he's a like the sweet guy Sean Astin was, or a jerk or something in between, he still accomplished something that a lot of people wish that they could accomplish. And it wasn't an easy path for him. And I have a lot of respect for that. I've never met the guy, can't speak on it, but I just think there's a lot of haters out there. I think it's a great movie. I really do. I enjoyed Rudy thoroughly as a movie. Still do. Watch it almost every year before the season. So, Trev, what say you?
Yeah, I watch Rudy every Saturday. It's the Saturday before Notre Dame season kicks off. That is my ritual. I've been doing that since I was like 11. It's a great movie because I love Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. I mean, to your point, it's very funny what people pick and choose to be like upset about for some things being more accurate than others. I mean, I hate to break it to you, Rudy Rudiger, when he was young, also didn't look like Sean Astin. And O'Hare didn't look like Vince Vaughn. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, it's okay. Like, not everything has to be to the T. I mean, it's a movie, guys. You know what I mean? And Aaron, I'm not saying that that's what you're saying, but I know some people that are up in arms like, this isn't accurate. And it's like, yeah, well, you know, it's a movie. It's Hollywooded up. I love the Avengers. I didn't throw a fit when I found out Tony Stark wasn't a real person. Like, it's based on a true story. Like,
well, it is funny to find that, like, what people get mad about. Like, you and I talked about this in Avengers Endgame when there was that group of incels, I think is probably who was upset about it, that got mad when there's that scene where all the girls come together and kick butt. Oh, that's not. I'm like, in a movie with a giant green person, a guy that can shrink to the size of an ant or grow to be the size of a building, a guy in a flying iron suit, a guy who's got superhuman strength because of a serum, and another guy who's a god from Asgard. That's the thing that was too beyond you to enjoy. I was like, as an uncle of 3 wonderful young ladies, I'm glad that they could watch that movie and see something that they could more relate to. I can relate to Captain America, right? I grew up in the 80s. I'm a America Rocks, and, you know, I'm always going to root for the good guy. Only He-Man characters I had were the good guys. I didn't own a Skeletor. I didn't own Panther. I didn't own, any of those. I could relate to that. Well, my niece may not be able to relate to that as much, but she can certainly relate to, Natasha, or any of the other ladies. And it's like, dude, it's a freaking superhero movie. Chill, because it was a pretty cool scene. And it's not like they built the whole movie around it. Like, some of the stuff they did later was like, okay, now y'all are going a little too far with some of the silliness. But that scene was freaking awesome, in my opinion. But people say, oh, that's not believable. None of this is believable. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, it was a great scene. And I knew who Skeletor was. I said I didn't have Skeletor characters. I only bought the good guy characters. Yeah, I knew all the bad guys were, obviously. I just didn't buy their characters.
I'll say this, as somebody who considers himself an analyst of football, with any sports movie, you have to suspend belief for a degree. If you've ever been at a football practice, if somebody doesn't show up to practice and then they do show up to practice, the team doesn't turn around and slow clap and form a tunnel while he runs onto the practice field. Like, it's,
but it was a cool scene for a movie.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that would be cool for a movie. Like, everything has to be dramatized. So I don't get upset when I hear stories of other players like, did you know that didn't actually happen? And it's like, yeah, because if you've ever played a sport, that doesn't happen. Like, and that's okay, but I want to watch it on screen. So I love Rudy, man, because I love Notre Dame. It's a great way to kick off any football season.
It is. AFMOS said, but BD, did you own a Cobra Commander, Destro, or Major Blood, G.I. Joe figure, or Megatron? No, I never bought any bad Decepticon. So, like, occasionally there's a Transformers game on, like, an app. And when I'm at night, if I can't sleep and I'm bored, I'll play it. And I never play with the Decepticons. I only play with the Autobot. I never bought a Decepticon. I never bought a Skeletor and his fight. I never had Aqua. What was his name? It wasn't Aquaman, but what I'm talking about. Like, I never bought Beastman. I never bought any of those characters. I never bought any of the Cobra Commander. Any of those those when I bought GI Joes. I did same with Thundercats. I only bought the good guys in Thundercats. I don't even know if they made toys for the bad guys in Thundercats. Honestly, that was such a sadly short-lived series. But no, and it's like that's just kind of how I am. I always root for the good guy. You know, when I was a kid, it's like I don't know who that guy is in the Olympics, but he's got the American jersey on, so you know I'm rooting for that guy. You know what I mean? Like if two boxers were fighting and I didn't know who you rooting for in this fight, I'm like, which one's American? You know, like this guy. Well, I'm rooting for him. You know, like this is kind of how I was. You know, you know that's how I was. But Rudy was a great movie, man. It was a great movie. Yeah, great movie.
Sure was.
But yes, Rudy was also. It's a very inspiring movie. Whether it happened or like this detail happened, the crux of the movie. Someone who couldn't get into Notre Dame went through the things he went through, got into Notre Dame, had to fight and claw to graduate from Notre Dame, got into a game, and made a sack. He made us. I mean, that play happened. You know what I mean? I don't. You know, they carried him off the field. Oh, they did that. Can't you just like let it be? Do you have to be that guy? Can we just enjoy the movie? Like you don't have to be that guy. Don't be that guy.
Another one from Trev's Buy Sell Hold Glasses. Which position group has the most to prove in 2026?
O-line. I think that's not even debatable for me. It's not even debatable. If everybody else just does exactly what they did last year, and let's say this, Trev, let's say the play at receiver perfectly negates the drop at running back from not having Jeremiah Love. So no, the running backs don't repeat that, but the receivers play well enough to where it's a wash between the two groups. Tight ends are the same. D-line's the same. Backers are the same. DBs are the same. Chris Ash is the same, meaning he calls junk the first 3 games and then awesome the rest of the season. But the offensive line plays to its potential. This team will go 12-0. Because they'll beat Wisconsin playing the way they did the first game last year. They almost still beat Miami. They'll beat Rice playing the way they did against Texas A&M because they almost beat Texas A&M. You know what I mean? Like, if the offensive line plays to its level of what it's capable of, this team will be no one will beat them in the regular season. Nobody will beat them. If there's no drop off, like overall drop off anywhere else. That's how important this team is, or this unit is to this team.
Yeah, this one's very, very close for me. I'm between offensive line or wide receiver. I'm going to say receiver. Now, which unit holds the key to Notre Dame's success on offense? I think it's the offensive line. But what unit has the most to prove to me is the wide receivers. It's like, okay, Mike Brown is now in year 3. You now have the talent. We have seen a baseline of what a Joe Rudolph offensive line is going to look like put together, give or take some variance. I've seen this offensive line perform in the playoffs. Good or bad, I've seen them perform. But this receiver unit, it feels like every year it's, okay, this is the year that they have insert an 1,000-yard guy here, a playmaking guy here. And we've seen inklings of it. We saw it this past season at times with Malachi Fields, especially when Jaden Greathouse was on the field. We saw it with Jaden Greathouse on the field in the playoffs, but they've yet to put it together for a full season. And I want to get to the point with this unit, because at least with the offensive line, I can say, hey, look at how, player A performed this season. So as a unit, the offensive line needs some work, but there is a general understanding of what you're going to get from that unit. For the receivers, it's still, hey, man, do you remember that one catch that one time on 3rd down from Jaden Greathouse? If we can just get that every single game this year, this is going to be a pretty good unit. I think the receiver position has the biggest jump in my eyes, but I do think the offensive line is going to hold the key to success of them being a championship caliber unit. I don't know if I explained that the right way. It made sense in my head when it was coming out, but that's how I separate the two. But it's very close.
It's a good one. Let's go here to Tommy Tough Nuts with the Marcus Freeman is my daddy t-shirt on Lincoln Riley avatar. Love it.
I love it. Can you rank the position groups that you think college football does best to worst, the best development with? Meaning generally, which position groups are most NFL ready come draft day?
I would argue, and Trev, I'm going to need to lean on you a little bit for this one because you watch more NFL than I do. I can tell you who I think the worst is. I think the worst is offensive line. I think the NFL is I think college football is doing a really, really bad job. And I'm not the only one saying this. Sean Davis and I have talked about this for a couple of years. Like you're seeing Aaron Taylor talk, you're seeing a lot of offensive line people talk more and more about this. I would argue what wide receiver, I think, is the one where you're seeing guys develop the most. And I don't know that I would necessarily only give credit to that to college football. I think the fact that these kids are playing in more throwing systems in high school, they're doing more 7-on-7. They're just getting more work, running routes and catching the football and having to win off press and all that kind of stuff. I think that would be another one. I would argue that defensive back, there's a lot more technicians in the secondary coaching college football than there are technicians at wide receiver even. And you could even make a case that there's more really good DB coaches in college football than there are really good offensive line coaches in college football. So I think those that in between, I mean, that's a different conversation. I don't know that I could rank them first to worst. Running back is always going to be a hard one to gauge because it's so much easier to develop running backs than any other position. It's a little tougher now than it was 20 years ago because pass pro and all that other kind of stuff, but it's still the easiest position so far. But yeah, I'll say wide receiver, secondary at the top, O-line at the bottom, quarterback barely above offensive line.
Yeah, this is a good question, Tommy, because a lot of it comes down to just what school you came from. I mean, as of lately, over the last couple seasons, I'm going to have a lot more confidence in a defensive back coming out of Notre Dame than I am a defensive back coming out of Florida, which for the longest time, a lot of people talked about Florida as being in contention for one of the DBUs along with Ohio State and LSU, Alabama, schools like that. So I think sometimes it depends. By and large, at the top, I would probably say running backs because of, I guess you call it the easier transition from college to the NFL. Running backs get used a lot similarly. We've seen younger running backs come into the league and make almost an immediate impact. Next, I'd probably put just defensive backs in general, corners and safeties in the same conversation with that. I'd put wide receivers after that because it very much depends on what route tree kids were running coming out of college when they get to the league. Because there's some that receivers coaches at the next level have to break back down. Because I think of a receiver like a DK Metcalf. When he was coming out of Ole Miss, one of the biggest things that was on him was, okay, so he runs vertical routes, he runs go routes and post routes. What else is there in his repertoire? Because you have to do a little bit more than that at the NFL level than you did at college. So receivers, it varies, but I'd probably put them third. Offensive line would
everywhere. It's just how much variance is there.
Sure.
And I just think there's a lot more good producers of wide receivers than there are. I do tend to try to stay away from some of the old school air raid guys. Like Art Briles he was great at producing elite offenses. His program was bad at producing NFL receivers for the reason that you mentioned, Trev, because DK Metcalf can get away with not knowing how to run routes because he's 6'3", 220 some pounds, jumps over 40 inches and runs really fast. Corey Coleman couldn't get away with that because he was 5'11", 195, right. And you know what I mean, and didn't know how to do all those things. And you've seen, other than Josh Gordon, who flamed out for non-football reasons, a lot of those big-time Baylor receivers under Art Briles and quarterbacks just did nothing in the NFL because, for the reasons that you're talking about, they just didn't know how to do it. They didn't know how to line up with an opposite foot stance. You know what I mean? They didn't know how to play and look to the right because they always looked only to the left because they only played on the right side of the formation. There's just not as much of that in that. That's what offensive line kind of has turned into. Yeah, in my opinion. But yes, you were going to say the worst. Go, Trev. Please continue before I interrupted you.
The worst, I would probably say quarterback, because I would argue there's no definitive QBU. You more have individual quarterback gurus than you do a school that produces quarterbacks. Offensive line is probably down towards the end of the discussion. And really the trench play, because that's probably the biggest level where it's the most difference between college and the NFL. I mean, truthfully, you could have a stud left tackle going into the league. I mean, Joe Alt, he was a very highly touted draft pick. And in college, he was going up against, Ohio State's defensive line and a bunch of other premier college football defensive lines. And then he gets to the NFL, and then he's going up against Khalil Mack and Myles Garrett. And so, I think that's the biggest adjustment And so I think those you see the slowest transition. So, yeah, that's what made guys like Zach Martin and Quentin Nelson so impressive, that they were hot right out of the gate. And so, yeah, that'd probably be the worst. I'd probably go quarterback and then offensive line. Yeah, for sure. I still think it's crazy with the draft coming up. I still think it's crazy FanDuel has Jeremiah Love as tied for the fourth best odds to go number one overall.
That's crazy.
Even though it's clearly going to be Fernando Mendoza. Yeah.
It'd be awesome if it did, though, right?
Man.
What do we say? Has there ever – I know there has been, like back in the 80s. I'm sure there was a running back that went number one overall, right? Had to have been. See, so 8. Let's see. Let's go back. 4. Leonard Fournette was 4. Ezekiel Elliott was 4. Gurley was 10. I was about to say Bishop Sankey was number 2 overall, but that's second round. Sorry, it said 1-2, but it's 1-2-2. First running back, second round, number 2 in that round. So let me see here. Trent Richardson went number 3 overall. Talk about a bust.
Off of a quick search, I found the last time a running back went number 1 overall was by the Cincinnati Bengals in the 1995 NFL draft. It was Kajana Carter.
Kajana Carter was number 1? I didn't. Let me see here. Yeah, he went number 1. I could have swore he was number 2. And Lawrence Phillips went 6. Like back then, you'd get guys. Curtis Enos went number 5 overall. Edgerrin James and Ricky Williams went back to back at 4 and 5. Jamal Lewis went 5. Thomas Jones went 7. Ron Dane went. Could you imagine this draft? 5 running backs taken in the first round. It was Jamal Lewis at 5, Thomas Jones at 7, Ron Dane at 11, Sean Alexander at 19, and Trung Candidate at 31. You remember him from Arizona? That was probably before your time. He was really back at Arizona.
That just shows you how different the league is now.
Yep. Kajana number 1. Year before that, Marshall Faulk number 2, Garrison Hurst number 3. Touchdown, Tommy Vardell went number 9 overall. Another one of a million bad picks for the Browns. Let's see here. Blair Thomas went number 2. Barry Sanders went number 3. Goodness gracious. Gaston Green, number 14. Alonzo Highsmith, number 3. Let me see here. Bo Jackson also was the number 1 overall pick in 1986. And I think there was another one in the 80s. No, Mike Rozier was 2. Eric Dickerson was 2. Well, in fairness to Eric Dickerson, he went number 2 because, the greatest quarterback ever was picked ahead of him, John Elway. And then George Rogers also went number 1 in 1981. Billy Sims went number 1 overall in 1980. So like I said, it used to be a lot different. I kind of miss that NFL a little bit, to be honest with you, where running backs just had more value. I do. I like to find a happy medium. Like, I didn't like the smash mouth run all the time of the NFL necessarily in the late 70s and early 80s, but I also don't like the de-emphasis we've seen now.
Sure.
So, yeah. And there you go. So, yeah, let's see here. Yep. Let me see something real quick. Yes, Bo Jackson was the number 1 draft pick in the 1986 NFL draft. Bobby, you are incorrect. Yep. So, not sure what you're talking about. This was an interesting debate we had on the board the other day, Trev. I want to get your thoughts on this. This is from Tommy Toughnuts as well. And it's related to a ranking that came out of the top coaches in college football. And they had Cignetti 1, I think it was Day 2 and Kirby 3, or, one of those 2 was 2 and 3. Then they had Dan Lanning 4 and Marcus Freeman 5. We had a long debate on the board about this. I want to get your thoughts on, would you rank Marcus Freeman above Dan Lanning in terms of top coaches? So we're going to actually do this over the summer, so you don't have to give away your whole ranking. But I would be curious to kind of get your response to this.
I would not. No, I would not rank Dan Lanning above Marcus Freeman. Or excuse me, I guess per the question, I would rank Marcus Freeman above Dan Lanning. Look, I'll say this. I understand the argument for Dan Lanning to be ahead. Marcus Freeman made the playoffs and played for the national championship. Dan Lanning at Oregon has now made the playoffs twice. Played for the college football playoff semifinals last year and played for the quarterfinals this past year. He gets a big bump from a lot of those services because Oregon's in a conference in his first year in the Big Ten. He He won the conference. He's done something that Marcus Freeman hasn't done. He beat Ohio State. But if I'm talking about who I would rather have heading my program, it's Marcus Freeman. So for my rankings, I would put Marcus Freeman above Dan Lanning. I fall somewhere in between because there's some people that look at it and it's like it's blasphemous. It's like I don't think it's blasphemous. I personally get the argument for it. I just wouldn't. Personally, I just wouldn't.
I think it's blasphemous because it's a Friday, and I just feel like arguing. Every other day, I would agree with you, Trev. No, look, I think it's a debate. I think there can be a debate. I don't think someone that would pick Lanning would be terrible. My issue is with the people that go with Lanning, especially Notre Dame fans, is you have to skew the argument in ways where you pretend certain things didn't happen. And here's what I mean by that. So we're having this debate the other day about it. And I'm not talking about you, Trev, but we're having this debate the other day. Somebody who I think highly of, great board member, OG on the site. He's talking about, like, he's beat Ohio State, like you mentioned. He's got a better regular season record, and he's never lost to a team like Northern Illinois or Marshall. I'm like, well, fair point. Marcus Freeman's worst loss in his entire career in 4 years. This was nuts to me. I didn't even realize this. Worst loss of his career was 13 points to Louisville in 2023. Dan Lanning lost by 46 to Georgia in his first game. Well, that's his first game. Okay, well, Notre Dame played Ohio State in their first game and lost by 11 and led till late in the third quarter. Yeah, but Georgia was the champs that year. Yeah, and they beat Ohio State by a point in the semifinals. And I know a lot of people would argue if Marvin Harrison doesn't get knocked out of that game, there's a lot of people think that Ohio State wins that football game. I don't know that I agree with it. We don't know. I mean, Ohio State's defense couldn't stop Georgia in the second half. I don't know how Marvin Harrison impacts that. You know what I mean? And they couldn't block Georgia in the fourth quarter either, I think. So, I mean, who knows if they would have or wouldn't have. But what I know is they were both great teams, and Notre Dame was far more competitive. Notre Dame does not have a 34-point playoff loss on their resume. They don't have a 20-point playoff loss on their resume. So, sure, great. He beats all the teams he's supposed to. So did Brian Kelly. And so, like, yeah, it's great. You beat Ohio State in the middle of the season, in the regular season, at home by a point. That's no different than Notre Dame beating Clemson in overtime in 2020 and they getting smacked when it meant more in the ACC title game. And that's kind of my pushback on Dan Lanning, Trev, when I debate this with people. It's like, great, he did a good job beating all the teams he's supposed to. They beat up on Portland State. They beat up on bad teams. Marcus Freeman has some bad losses under his belt when it comes to bad teams, no doubt about it. But he's also gone deeper than Dan Lanning's ever done. Well, he beat James Franklin at Penn State. So did Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. Haven't beat Ohio State. I'll give you that. He's beat Georgia, something that Dan Lanning hasn't done. He's 0-1 against him. He what's he 0-2 against Indiana. Notre Dame beat Indiana. So, like, if we wanted to play this game of, well, he's beat Ohio State, Notre Dame hasn't, which is a true fact. I would say his loss to Ohio State was, I believe, by about as many points as Notre Dame's 3 losses to Ohio State. But Notre Dame's beat Georgia. Dan Lanning lost by 46 to Georgia. Beat Indiana. They've lost twice to Indiana, both times by double digits. Like, we could play this game of cherry-picking data. End of the day, I think Marcus Freeman has the program and Dan Lanning both have their programs in an upward trajectory. No doubt about it. And they're both great, doing a great job. I just feel like at the end of the day, who has proven that they can get their team in the postseason and then compete in the postseason? That's been Marcus Freeman, not Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning's been in the playoffs twice. He's 1-2. Beat Texas Tech, got blown out by Ohio State, got blown out by Indiana. Marcus Freeman's only made the playoffs once, won 3 games, lost 1 by 11. So I that's kind of how I look at it, Trev, is, yeah, Marcus Freeman's got some of those black eye games, but on the biggest stages, Marcus Freeman's teams are always competitive, and they've won more of those big games. And that's what comes down to me. That's my argument. If you're going to sit there and tell me, let's just say you're taking the opposite view, because you didn't. You said you'd rank Freeman. Let's say, though, you didn't feel that way and you did go with Lanning. I'm not going to sit there after the show and be like, Trev, I cannot believe you said that. I cannot believe that you took Dan Lanning over Marcus Freeman. Well, where do you have Lanning, Brian? I have him all the way down to number 5, right behind Marcus Freeman. You know what I mean? Like, he's doing a great job. I just think Freeman has done a little bit of a better job. But we're not talking about I have Freeman 4 and Lanning 9, or you have Freeman, Lanning 4 and Freeman 7 or 8 or 9. We're talking about two guys that are back-to-back. I just think the big game version of Marcus Freeman trumps. Because isn't that what our big beef was with Brian Kelly? Great. You beat all the teams you're supposed to beat. Wonderful. You have great regular season records every year in your last few years. But what happened when you got on the biggest stage? You not only lost, you got destroyed. And that's kind of what's happened to Dan Lanning so far in those moments. So I just want to see him improve in those areas. I'll say this. I think this is there are 3 teams that I believe are poised to have their best teams yet under their current head coaches. And that's Notre Dame, Oregon, and Texas. I think those 3 teams this year are their best shots to win yet. They've all had different shots to win, Trev. Texas has had teams that have a shot to win. Oregon's had teams shot to win. Notre Dame's had teams that have a shot to win. I think this is a good chance that all 3 of those are going to be their best team, or should be their best teams yet, roster-wise and all those type of things. So that's kind of why I would have Freeman ahead of Lanning. And I would debate it, but I wouldn't say the person on the other side is like nuts for feeling that way. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
They're both top 5.
Yeah, it's their big game performance is why I would put Freeman above. Truthfully, I mean, it's who would I have more confidence in the stage that it matters? That's Marcus Freeman. So yeah, I agree completely. It's a very close discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's 2-2 in the playoffs. I forgot about that huge win over James Madison. My bad. But still, 2 years has one less win in the playoffs than what Marcus Freeman does. And his wins are over Texas Tech, who was very overrated, and James Madison.
From Bobby S. Is Rob Hunt speaking to the media about injuries this year like he did last year? That was a really helpful thing they did last year.
No idea. I think he only did that once, right?
Yeah, I think he did it. Did he do it after spring? Or before spring?
Yeah, I think it was right before the Blue Gold game.
Yeah.
It was like right before the Blue Gold game. Yeah.
Yeah, the window win helped, but it wasn't nothing that we learned was earth-shattering news because they're also not going to divulge a bunch of information that they want to keep behind closed doors anyways. But to this question, Bobby, I have no idea. From our guy Salty, nickel cornerback seems to be an ill-defined position. It has no positional award. Ergo the Bolitnikov, for example. Does Notre Dame recruit cornerbacks for it or specifically recruit nickel corners?
Well, that's actually incorrect because Bolitnikov is not for slot receivers. It's for any receiver. A nickel cornerback can be an All-American. He can win the Jim Thorpe Award. Especially nowadays, you're seeing more of that. So I don't agree with the premise that they don't have a award specifically for them because they are considered a defensive back. And so if, let's say Christian Gray moves to nickel and he has 55 tackles and 7 interceptions and 8 pass breakups this year and plays great, he could win the Jim Thorpe Award. So I would disagree that they don't have a positional award because they're a defensive back. Does Notre Dame recruit cornerbacks for it specifically? Yes and no. Some guys they recruit specifically for that. For example, Nick Reddish was primarily recruited to be a nickel. Now, he can play some safety, but the first position they were going to give him a shot at is nickel. Dallas Golden was not necessarily recruited to play nickel. It was one of the options that they were recruiting him to play. So it just depends, Trev. There's some years that they see a guy as just a great fit at the nickel spot. Other years, they recruit the best DBs knowing that a couple guys may have the tools to move inside should that be there. So and I do agree with the part about it being ill-defined because it varies so much from team to team. But that's not abnormal for corners and safeties either, Trev. I mean, if you're watching a team that plays a lot of cover two, how their safeties play is going to be very different than the team that plays a lot of forward and a lot of cover one and a lot of man. Corner, same thing. A cover two corner is very different than a cover one corner and how they play and how they're utilized. So I do think it's a bit ill-defined, but it's less so than it used to be. It's becoming more a part of regular defenses than it used to be.
Well, I think you're starting to see schools like Notre Dame recruit to that fact. I mean, think about some of the guys they brought in the last couple of seasons. They brought in Tay Johnson, who's obviously the starting field safety, but at one point in time, he could have played corner. You know, you talked about Nick Reddish and Dallas Golden. I mean, we've talked about Aiden Pouncey, where, heck, he could switch over to the other side of the ball, start playing some receiver too. So I think you're starting to see that across the board a little bit. Not necessarily positionless football on the back end. Like body types will affect that. You're going to have boundary corners, but sometimes you just recruit kids and it's like, okay, you can play all 5 of these positions. Now let's see which one you can excel at the most.
Sorry, Trevor, I just got a kick out of Time Cone's comment. He says, I'm from Chicago and voted 3 times for Bryant's victory. Well played. This is a question that just came in from Based Pilgrim. We appreciate this. And I'm bringing this one up. It just came in because it's kind of, I don't want to get too far away from the Lanning Freeman debate that we were just having. I think this is an appropriate one for that. He says, Trev, does a coach's likelihood or leaving college to coach in the NFL impact their standing on the list of greatest college coaches? Does Dan Lanning staying at Oregon make him a more desirable hire? I just want to give my quick thoughts on this, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree, Trev. For me, it has no bearing on it. I can only evaluate coaches on what we know and what they have done. The minute a coach leaves from the NFL, then we kind of remove him from the conversation. Up until then, everything else is just kind of rumors. So Dan Lanning can say all he wants, I'm staying at Oregon. And I actually believe him. He says it with like conviction, and he backs it up because we don't hear these long, drawn-out conversations with him of NFL teams or other teams, and then he's like, oh, I'm staying here. He says right away, the minute a job's open and his name is listed, he's like, guys, I'm not going anywhere. I'm happy here. I want to stay here. I kind of like that. That makes me believe that he genuinely wants to stay at Oregon. But that has no basis on the job he's doing right now. And he can say that until almost everybody has like that one job that they would leave a place for. You know, and not everybody, but there's always that one where it's like, man, the time is right. This is a job I've always dreamed of, et cetera, et cetera. I just got to take it. But, you know, I assume he's referring to Marcus Freeman, but Marcus Freeman leaving for the NFL is only relevant if he leaves from the NFL. Up until then, he has to be evaluated for the job he's doing in college. Now, you could argue that if, let's say, he stays until 2027 and we go through another offseason of, is he coming or going? That those type of things can impact the job he's doing. It's a distraction. You know, they don't get some recruits that they could have got. Like if something like that happens, then Trev might say, look, I'm going to ding him because these constant flirtations with the NFL are hurting his ability to hire coaches, to get recruits, or if that were to be. But that would be part of the job he's doing in college and something he's doing that's hindering that. So for me, it doesn't have any basis whatsoever on where they rank. It only means if a guy leaves, you remove him from the rankings because he's no longer a college football coach.
Yeah, we see that very much the same. You evaluate it for what it is. I don't have any inflection about Urban Meyer and what he did, and it was an absolute dumpster fire when he went to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, that being said, that doesn't at all impede how I view him as a collegiate coach. He's one of the greatest college coaches of my lifetime for what he did at Florida and then when he did at Ohio State. So no, you evaluate it for what it is, in my opinion. So yeah, we view that the same.
All right, let's get to some more. I want to try to find some that from people we haven't got to yet. Here we go. Rabid Wombats.
Haven't seen you in the chat in a while either, Rabid. It's good to see you back in here. We have 2 new players wearing number 11, Keon Keeley and Devin Fitzgerald. Which do you think will have the most impactful Notre Dame career? Will either be among the greatest to wear number 11, such as Alohi Gilman?
I mean, that's a lot to put on guys. I loved Alohi Gilman, and we really only had him at Notre Dame for 2 years. So you can't say, well, we won't have Keon long enough because Notre Dame really only had Alohi for 2 years. As far as like he was at Notre Dame for 3 years, but he couldn't play his first year. He played as a freshman at Navy, then had to sit out a year in 2017, and then played in 18 and 19. So he only played for 2 seasons. So Keon could certainly have that kind of impact. But if you think about the impact that Alohi Gilman had, it wasn't just as a good football player. He was a great leader on those teams as well. I mean, I still remember some of his locker room speeches that they would play after the fact, and you're like, dude, like I'm literally ready to go run through a wall right now. And he was a really good football player. Can any of them be like that? I think they both can. Yeah, I think they both have the ability to have that kind of impact. Devin could have a longer term impact than Alohi or Keon. But Keon certainly has the talent and potential to be like a 2-year difference maker on some really good football teams. Because what did Notre Dame do in Alohi's career? They went, 23-3 during his 2 years as a starter at Notre Dame? And their 3 losses were to Georgia, Clemson, and Michigan. I mean, he was a pretty good football player and on some really good football teams. So that's asking a lot, but I think they're both capable of it in different ways. Now, I don't expect Devin's impact to start this season, but down the road, certainly. And Trev, I'll kick it to you because I know you'll probably even have a stronger opinion on one of these guys having that potential impact even more so than I do because I know you're super high on Devin Fitzgerald.
I am. I'm a big Devin Fitz guy, and some of it is just waiting for all of those genetics to fully kick in. I was a huge Larry Fitzgerald fan, and then seeing some of the traits that Devin has shared with what his dad had, waiting for that to catch up a little bit. But I think Devin's journey at Notre Dame is going to be very similar to what Bryce Young's was. As might flash given an opportunity as a true freshman. Because, I mean, Bryce got some of his opportunities because of injuries at the defensive end position. Now, I still think he would have played, but I don't know what impact Devin's going to have in 26. But I could see a lower level breakout for him in 27. And then 2028, I could see him really coming onto the scene. I think it's just going to be tough to evaluate because I don't think their breakouts are going to happen at the same time where we can sit down and watch on our TVs on Saturdays. It's like, okay, which number 11 is going off today? Is it Keon or is it going to be Devin? But yeah, I think both of them have the opportunity to be, but right now it's just so tough to compare it to what Alohi Gilman did because I know what Alohi Gilman did in a Notre Dame uniform, and I have yet to see Keon Keeley or Devin Fitzgerald in a Notre Dame uniform in a game day setting. So do they have the opportunity to potentially? I think more immediately, I think that'll be Keon, but it wouldn't surprise me if Devin was in that conversation either. Getting into part 2 of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the Friday free-for-all mailbag going on, and getting us kicked off of part 2 is Frank G, who's coming up to South Bend for the first time this year for the Michigan State game. Where would you guys or the chat suggest I go for the Sunday football games the day after?
Well, I am someone who actually likes Buffalo Wild Wings, so that would always be kind of my go-to. But there's like is it Wings Etc.? Is that the one over across the street from the mall? It's a Wings Etc., right? They're pretty good. There's a couple places across the street now on Eddy Street. Isn't one of them called Brothers? Isn't that one of the? Okay, so they have a bunch of screens, I believe, up that you can watch games there if you want to be near campus. If you're in town for that experience, I would try Brothers first and see if you can get a seat because then you're kind of right there and it's very cool and all that kind of stuff. But Buffalo Wild Wings is less than 10 minutes away. Wings Etc. is less than 10 minutes away from campus. Those are a couple good places that I like to go to. Before Scotty's Brewhouse closed down, I like to go there, Trev. They had a lot of TVs and they had a great pretzel bun.
Yeah, dude.
It's just that spot just keeps closing down. Like nobody can win there. And the problem with Scotty's Brewhouse for me was they were so inconsistent with the quality of the food. Sometimes I'd go there and it's like, dude, this is a phenomenal meal. And then the next time it's like they're out of pretzel buns, the burgers weren't cooked well. Like they'd clearly switched companies of this product or whatever. But man, I really liked Scotty's Brewhouse. But at the end, that was the issue. Early on, like, dude, you go there, you're going to get a good burger and good fries and good TV angles. I miss that place. But I mean, those are usually the places I go to. I don't really go to watch a lot of games around here because I have a house where I can watch the games. But those are kind of some places that I'd look at. Trev, I know you might have a few more suggestions from your time living. You lived here a lot longer than I did.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie Street's always a good place to go. There's O'Rourke's, which is an Irish pub. It's across the street from the bookstore over there. That's always a solid place you can go to. I mean, Frank, it honestly depends on what kind of vibe you're going for. I mean, B-Dubs, Wings, etc. Any of those sports bars is solid. Brothers is good. They have really cheap drinks. The food there is honestly pretty decent. I'm a big fan of their ranch,
Does
but
Legends have TVs?
I believe so. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so if you want to eat on campus, Legends has TVs. They have decent food.
yeah,
Like it's pricey, but it's decent food.
yeah.
I haven't,
Definitely a lot of
I've only
places.
eaten at Brothers. I've only eaten at Brothers once. I don't remember if it was good or bad. I met a Notre Dame coach there one time for lunch. I can't remember if it was good or bad, but I've heard it. You're not the first person to tell me they actually have decent food there, so
Hmm.
that's good.
Yeah, back in college, that was like the rager bar that a lot of people would go to, and I get it's like one of the only like clubbier type of bars, and I use the term club loosely. Outside of that, you're gonna have to go to like Finnegan's or something in downtown South Bend. Some people go to the Backer. I would not go to the Backer to like watch an NFL game. You could, depends on the vibe that you're looking for, but there's a lot of good places up there, Frank. It's hard to go wrong with any of them, really.
All right, let's get to some more here. Got one from Mark Avalone.
What are you hearing about Notre Dame's policy on rev sharing in non-football sports, including women's athletics?
I have not heard anything on that, Mark. I do believe that the majority of that is going to go to the football program. The men's and women's basketball teams will get a cut, but it's going to be a large chunk of that's going to go to the football team because they're the driver of revenue at Notre Dame. But the women's and men's teams will get some change too.
From Notre Dame Villain, what do you think of the championship game being so late this upcoming year? Not a fan of it. I mean, I'm not somebody that thinks that the season needs to end on New Year's Day, but I also think that January 25th is way too late. I mean, thinking about it now, a year from now, like let's just say Notre Dame wins the national championship. Think of all the things that have happened since the end of the regular season to now at this point. This time next year, we'll have been talking about Notre Dame played a game a month ago. I mean, so think about all of the recruiting things that have been done and navigating the transfer portal and all those things. I think it is way too late because now you're asking programs to be gearing up for the spring. I mean, spring practice for Notre Dame starts in a couple of weeks. I mean, so they're going to get almost less than two. Actually, they're going to get less than 2 months off before they're kind of back into the swing of everything again. So I think it's way too late. I'm not a fan of it. Do I think it needs to be pushed up to New Year's Day? No, I don't. January 25th is way too late.
I do. There's this new kick, and it's Josh Payton, people like this are pushing it, and it's football needs to end on January 1st. That's to me, that's nonsense. And January 1 is a sacred day. Yeah, it was. But what made January 1st great, Trev? You could wake up in the morning and starting at 11 o'clock, you had football all day. So now you want to get rid of that, and you want to make it to where now we only get one game on January 1st? Like, no, thank you. January 1st should have like 2 bowl games in the morning and then an afternoon, semifinal game and then the evening semifinal game is what it should be. And then you play the title game 7 to 10 days later, depending on when the next Monday is. And so that's what it should be. Like January 1st should be to me when they have the semifinals. That's what I want to see. You can move it because right now it's the quarters are on January 1st, right? 31st is 1 and then 3 on 31st. That's fine. I just think the season needs to get done sooner than that. I think everything needs to get moved up. Go to a 16-team playoff. Get rid of conference championships. You have the conference championship weekend now turns into Army-Navy. And then the next week you start the first round games. So everybody gets a bye. And then so that'll be first or second Saturday of December. Then the next Saturday, hopefully you can stay on Saturdays. But the next Friday, Saturday, maybe you then have the quarterfinals. Then you have probably about a 10-day layoff between that and the semis, which, again, I'm okay with. I like a little bit of time between those because, A, you can hype it up because this is still entertainment. And, B, I think creating a little bit more time off between those last 2 games is just a little bit better for young men that are getting ready to play their 15th, 16th, maybe, games. And so I think that's what I would do. And then I'd play the title game, like I said, a week later. That's what I would do.
And this year it's even going to be weirder because there's going to be no game on New Year's Eve. They're going to play on December 30th and then not play New Year's Eve and then play 3 games on January 1st
because they don't want to compete with the NFL, which is just
got to get that Thursday night football game on Amazon Prime.
Yeah. Like
really
the fact that college football is afraid of that is just stupid to me.
Yeah.
Like you're so afraid of it. You think a quarterfinal game is going to draw less crowd than a Thursday night NFL. I think it's more about they're just afraid of pissing off the NFL, which is like, whatever, dude. Yeah. All right. We got one from Blue Lobster 1000.
What is the rumored new offensive line players and positions? Well, we've talked a little bit about it here so far, Blue Lobster. And a lot of it derives from that video that CJ Carr posted of handing out headphones to everybody, Bose headphones, part of his NIL package. And in the middle row of the offensive line room, because based on the seating of everybody else in the room, it looked like they were sat based on positions. So in the farthest right of the room, you had right tackles. In the farthest left of the room, you had left tackles. Well, in the middle row from left to right, you had Will Black at left tackle, Anthony Knapp at left guard, Ashton Craig at center, Sullivan Absher at right guard, and Gerby Lambert at right tackle. And so that has been what a lot of the new, I guess you'd call it, rumored offensive line lineup is going to look like. And then based on some things that we've heard, like we knew that Gerby Lambert was going to get kicked out to right tackle, kind of just adds a little bit of fuel to that fire, knowing that there's now a really strong chance that this is what the first team offensive line unit, maybe barring Ashton Craig, because I don't know if he's going to be out there in pads on the first day of spring, but odds are it's probably what the first team offensive line is going to look like in the first day of spring practice. So gets a lot of people fired up, myself included.
Oh, yes. And I've had some conversations with people, and I would not be surprised if this was, in fact, what we see first day of spring practice, which we'll be at. We'll see.
From Ballpeen Shillelagh, when you're covering games, how far out does a game have to be for you to fly rather than drive?
It has to be more than like 6 hours, basically. Like I drive to Pitt games. It's about 5.5 hours for me. I'll drive to Lambeau Field this year. It's about 4.5 hours, I believe. I haven't mapped it out, but I think when I looked it up this past year, I think it was 4.5. I drive to Pittsburgh. If they played in St. Louis, I would drive to St. Louis. It just I like driving, and I've my wife and I early in our marriage we did a road trip. We went from Denver to Ohio to visit family. Then we drove down to Virginia to visit family. Then we drove down all the way down to Texas for the Army All-American game because I had to cover that. So like we stopped in Louisiana, we stopped in Alabama, we stopped in Louisiana, we stopped, and then we made it all. We stopped, I think, one place in Texas, and then stopped. Just kind of a family road trip. And we had Brady with us, so we'd get like restaurant and take it back to the hotel, food, all that kind of stuff. It was a great trip. And then that was the Army All-American. But that was the year that Notre Dame played Miami in the Sun Bowl and smacked Miami in the Sun Bowl. And it's still funny because you go back to that, and I remember during that game they interviewed Al Golden, who had just gotten hired as the head coach at Miami. And then also that it was a crazy weekend because that was the weekend where the whole Aaron Lynch thing went down at the Army game, where he was committed to Florida State, and then there were some things that were done by some coaches at Florida State because they were panicked because Notre Dame was trying to make a push for them, and coaches could meet with players that weekend at the event, and so like Florida State coaches were there, Notre Dame coaches were there, and Florida State coaches panicked thinking Aaron was going to flip. I didn't think he was going to flip, but I thought it was close. So they basically had his high school coach reschedule his flight from San Antonio to go to Tallahassee. So that way he couldn't go home. And they kind of cut mom out of the conversation, and that really pissed Aaron off. And so that was one of the things that led to him ultimately flipping, is the panic that Florida State coaches said. And they said some things to him to try to kind of shame him into flipping, and it was a terrible. If they just would have shut up and not dealt with it, I think it would have gone fine. Yeah, Trev, I have no idea why this keeps. It's a string. We're going to leave this place. This is ridiculous. Like it just keeps switching my mic over. It just started ever since all these other issues started. So, but yeah, that's that was an interesting week. But that's a long tangent or back away from the original question, but I just like driving. And it's a little tougher now that I'm older. My knees hurt a little bit more when I get out of the car after being in it for 6 or 7 hours, but I enjoy road trips, and I enjoy doing road trips with my wife. And I'm thinking about driving to Syracuse. The only thing that's a little bit of concern is the time of the year and the potential, roads being not great. So I'll probably fly to that one, but I've thought about driving to that one. I drove to Syracuse last time they played at Syracuse. So it's 2022. So actually, Ryan and I both covered the game. He covered it for me, so we were both there. But it was obviously from Jersey. It was a lot shorter trip for him than it was for me. But I ended up driving that weekend. But that was a different situation. I could, stop at my grandma's house and things like that. I won't obviously do that anymore. But 5-6 hours is usually kind of my cutoff for when I drive as opposed to fly.
No, it makes sense. I'm a driver too. I mean, I'll drive anywhere unless it's inconvenient to drive around the city. I mean, honestly, it's even if I live closer to New York City, when I went out to cover the Yankee Stadium game, I would not have wanted to drive around New York. That's just something I'll fly and take an Uber or a taxi or the subway. Nah.
We got a rental car, but we stayed outside of the city and drove in, which was not fun. Driving in that day, it was not fun. But it was a great experience, being there with Andrew. Because you were there. Didn't Lauren was there for the game too, right?
Yeah, Lauren was there with me. My sister lives out there, so they went
Yeah.
to the game together, and I got to be in the press box.
I got to look down on Angela down on the field taking photos and stuff. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Then from Mark M9, will Alabama miss the playoffs?
It's possible. I'm back and forth on this Alabama team, but I'm right now currently I'm a little higher on that team for a couple reasons, Trev. I think their schedule is a little bit more manageable than maybe some other teams in their league. Because, here's the thing, Trev, with so many of these things, I may pick a team to make the playoff and another team not, but I may think the team that's not going to make it is a better team. It's just these imbalanced schedules just make it to where it's like, okay, if it's close, I'm going to go with this team. So you look at Alabama, they don't have an easy schedule. I mean, they play Florida State, they play South Carolina. Even East Carolina is not an easy game. They were a 7-8 win team last year. They get Georgia at home, they get Texas A&M at home, they get Auburn at home. So those are all tough opponents, but they get them at home. Their road games are at Kentucky, at Mississippi State, at Tennessee, which will be tough, at LSU will be tough, and then at Vanderbilt. So it's not an easy schedule, but there's some other teams in that league that just have way tougher schedules, in my opinion. And so I think this Alabama team has a shot to make the playoffs this year. Whether or not they do is in part going to be determined by how well some other teams improve. How good is Auburn this year? How good is LSU this year? Do they make a jump? Does Ole Miss take a step back, or do they keep plugging away? I mean, that's going to affect. If Alabama's the same team they were last year, but Tennessee, Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Ole Miss all take steps back, well, guess what? Alabama's in the playoffs. If Alabama's the same team they were last year, but LSU's improved, Tennessee's improved, Vanderbilt's still rolling, Auburn's improved, well, then they may, Mississippi State takes a jump this year under Jeff Lebby, then they could still be the same team, but you've got now 3 regular season losses as opposed to not getting your third loss till the conference title game. You know what I mean? So, that's kind of what's going to factor into it. As of today, I have Alabama as a fringe playoff team. It's possible they miss it, but I think they're going to be in the competition. I think they're probably about another year away before a potential of a big drop-off. And a big reason why I just have a hard time completely having too much of a drop-off is I do think they've improved their offensive line, and I just think they're going to have way more talent at quarterback. Physical, God-given talent at quarterback the next couple of years. They're going to have a really talented quarterback. And one thing we've seen from Kalen DeBoer, as much as I hate how he just has refused to run the ball, dude, when he has a legit NFL quarterback, not like a guy that's going to get picked high because the NFL overdrafts quarterbacks. And if you're the number 2 in a draft pick class, you're going to get picked high, even if you're a mediocre player. Ty Simpson is a career backup in the NFL, in my opinion. If that. He's Ian Book, right? Matter of fact, I'd probably rather have Ian Book than Ty Simpson, to be completely honest with you. Having said that, he's still going to get picked high. I think you and I agree that the physical talent of the two kids that are battling for this job now is significantly greater. And if the light ever goes on for Keelan Russell, he's got star talent. And when Kalen DeBoer has an elite quarterback, his teams are dangerous, no matter how little they run the football. And that's, I just think they're also going to run the ball more this year. I could be giving him too much credit, but I just feel like why make this move, and this move if you're not going to run the ball at least a little bit more? What do I mean by running it more? Like they average 150 rushing yards this year. Like that's what I mean by running it more as opposed to 103 or whatever it was this past season. You know what I mean? Which was gross. You take out, I think they were around 100 yards a game if you take out the FCS game. I actually think that they were, Trev. Actually, let me go look that up real quick. So let's go national rushing rankings, offense versus FBS. Let's go Alabama. They were 92.4. They were 92.4 against FBS teams last year. That is gross. And they made the freaking playoffs. They were at a 104. I was close. 104 on the season. That's gross, Trevor. University of Alabama averaged 92 rushing yards a game against FBS opponents last year. That's gross. Not Power 4 opponents, FBS opponents. That's really disgusting.
Yeah, that's foul. I mean, that is atrocious. For today, I'm going to say no. Their schedule has so much room for variance. Now, I think that they're going to benefit from playing Kentucky early. Now, if just by and large, I would not love hearing they play Kentucky on the road, but considering you get them in week 2, I think that's going to benefit them. But to your point, Shane Beamer in South Carolina, they gave them a run for their money last year, and they were a 3-9 football team. Now, luckily, they get to play them down in Tuscaloosa. They still have some talent there. I like what Jeff Lebby did at Mississippi State this past season. They have to play them on the road. Obviously, Georgia and A&M, big picture, the hardest games right now. But if there's 2 teams in the SEC that I would not want to play in November that have new coaches, it's LSU and Auburn, and Alabama gets both of them in the month of November, and one of them is on the road. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it has so much variance for me that I just don't know what we're going to see here. Yeah. Offensively, I like their step up at quarterback. I think their offensive line has a chance to be better. I don't know what to expect from their wide receiver core. Ryan Williams was a disappointment from what he coming off of his true freshman season to what he was as a sophomore. Now you no longer have Isaiah Horton. I believe their tight end that they targeted a lot is also gone, and Jeremy Bernard is also gone. So it's kind of what takes today. Is it the more athletic, improved quarterback and a better offensive line, or is it a remade skill position group and hopefully just keeping our fingers crossed that Kalen DeBoer is more willing to run the football? The other thing that I think is working against them as well, and you'll have to hear me out on this one, but Alabama caused a lot of flack this past season for, their own alum were talking about how they didn't deserve to be in, and the playoff committee already lost a lot of credibility, and from very little credibility that they already had from other sources, right? So I don't know if you're going to see Alabama get in this year over like a Texas. I don't think Alabama is going to get to benefit from playing in the SEC championship this year either. I think the SEC championship is going to be 2 of these 3 teams, Georgia, Texas, and Texas A&M. I think it could be 2 of those 3 teams play for the SEC championship. So I don't even know if Alabama is going to get the opportunity to lose by 21 points in the SEC championship,
which I think would benefit them if they're 10-2.
Yeah,
but it's about whether or not they get that 3rd loss that's going to be the key, Trev.
It'll be very, very interesting to see what they do. But that month of November is going to be absolutely crucial for them. Mm-hmm. Luckily they get a bye week in between when they play Texas A&M and then when they hit the road against LSU. I think that's going to help them out quite a bit. Vanderbilt's always still going to be a scrappy team.
Yep. They're not going to be as good as – they're going to look more like they were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Than they do now. But 2 years ago, that team beat Alabama.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they're capable of beating Alabama. I just don't know late in the year if they're going to have the horses and the depth to beat a team like Alabama.
I'll say this. FanDuel doesn't have any of the playoff odds out yet. Right now, Alabama is not very highly thought of to win the national championship. They're behind Texas A&M, LSU, Miami. They are significantly behind Texas Tech. There's a big drop-off after Texas A&M. Alabama's odds to win the national championship are plus 2,700. The next closest team is Texas A&M at plus 1,600. So obviously playoff odds and national championship odds are different, but kind of gives you a window in by our friends over at FanDuel. That's for sure. From the history expert, is Notre Dame's independence a key driver for its relevance as a nationwide program all year long? And would joining a conference diminish its relevance?
Yes and yes, in my opinion, which is part of the reason that I don't like going to a conference. So Notre Dame being an independent is they had to look for games. This idea that Notre Dame's going to struggle to get games. You think it's harder now to get games than it was in 1925 as an independent team where you had to, take trains to go play in California? Like, you think it's harder now? You can go schedule a lot of teams and fly there. It's not what people make it out to be. So they had to go out and play out in LA. They had to go out and, to the Polo Grounds and play Army, in New York. They had to travel all over the place. They had to play anybody kind of anywhere, anytime in order to get games. But then also they kind of had this big, fan base that started because they were a Catholic school. So obviously where there places where there were a lot of Catholics, you were going to have a decent number of Notre Dame fans. And so then they would do things to try to get out in front of those audiences. So Notre Dame was, the first bowl game they ever played in was with Newt Rockne as a coach, and that was 1925. Now, they didn't play any bowl games after that for 40 plus years, but like the whole willingness to kind of barnstorm across the country because they were rejected by the Big Ten is why Notre Dame became the program that we all know and love. And it's why they became a program that when the TV deals changed because of the Supreme Court case in 1984, and Notre Dame had the power to say, we're going to leave the CFA and go get our own TV deal because we can. They couldn't have done that if the Big Ten would have said, come along, we love you guys. We're not anti-Catholic at all. We love Catholics. Come on over, Notre Dame. And, the multiple times they tried to do that, then Notre Dame would not be the national team they are now. They still might be a really good team, a great Big Ten team, but I don't know if Notre Dame would have grown the way that they are now. There's this notion that, like, Notre Dame still would have become an elite all-time program. Maybe. I don't know that. I don't know that Notre Dame would have been able to recruit nationally at that level the way that they did back then. And I don't know that there's a lot of evidence for it. So I think they would very much be a much more so a regional program, just like Penn State's kind of become that, just like Miami has kind of become that, just like Florida State has become that. You very much become a regional program when you join a league that's based on a certain region. Now, there could be a world where, depending on what league you join, it doesn't hurt you as bad, but that's a big reason I'm anti-Big Ten. Playing in the ACC, Trev, you're playing in California, you're playing in Florida, you're playing, you're actually playing, you're playing in Texas, you're still playing kind of a national schedule. You play in the Big Ten, you got the West Coast teams and the Northern teams, and that's about it. So I think the ACC would actually be better for Notre Dame as a league if you had to join a conference, because you could still play anywhere from Pittsburgh to Boston up in the Northeast, down to Miami in the South, over to Texas, and then up to California. That's the stretch of the Atlantic Coast Conference now. And so that's why I think that conference would still allow them to be a little bit more national in how they play teams.
Yeah, you and I see this very much the same. Excuse me, talked about it a lot yesterday. We are definitely on the same page here.
Brandon Gilbert just put this up relative to kind of this conversation because I was having it yesterday. He goes, Brandon said, I was so impressed but not surprised with how you handled the debate on Crane. I think they were caught off guard with your knowledge of history and not just regurgitating old talking points. I appreciate that very much, Brandon. I enjoyed it. And I got to give them a shout out because Alex and I both had told them that, like, guys, we're not interested in doing like this, like what a lot of debate shows are now, where we just kind of yell at each other and talk over each other. And, we both wanted a good professional debate. So I didn't interrupt him. He didn't interrupt me. And we had our debates. And I thought we both, represented our points of view well. The reason I think I won the debate is because I think I have the truth on my side. I think, the arguments that I make are just factual, but yeah, I mean, you just when all you're going to say about Notre Dame needing to be joining conferences because they play cupcakes, and then the second and third best teams on your schedule is Duke and Wake Forest, you're gonna lose that argument. You know what I mean? Like in today's era of imbalanced schedules, you can no longer use that argument against Notre Dame. So, but yeah, but no, I mean, I had a good conversation with Alex beforehand, good conversation afterwards. But yeah, I did feel like, okay, we're just going to regurgitate like the narratives. Well, I think you know me well enough to know, Trev, I'm not going to get dragged into that fight. I'm like, okay, cupcakes, huh? Don't they play Miami next year? Isn't half their schedule built on teams that are in the league that your team is in? Okay, cool. Okay. That was, that, but again, that's a narrative. That's not a fact. And I tried to stick to facts. The other two were more opinion based because how do we know who's the better quarterback, who's going to be the better quarterback, who's going to win the title first? But I think the conference one was more, he was going to have to come with more than cupcakes and just cause in order to convince me that Notre Dame should join a league. You have to come with something better than that. But I enjoyed it. But I really appreciated the guys at Crane and Company they're trying to foster good debate. I went and watched the one between the Oklahoma and the Texas guy. And it was a little bit too respectful for me. Like it was a little bit too like, oh yes, great point. But it's like, okay, make your point. But it's not, they're trying, at least is what they're doing now. They're trying not to turn it into like a Skip Bayless versus Shannon Sharp yell fest, which I appreciate because there's enough of that crap around. Like, let's have a good, honest debate. And I really appreciated how they facilitated that because the moderators are going to determine whether it's a good debate or not. And they can ask questions in a way that are going to inflame. They can allow people. They can tell us, hey man, you interject at any point in time. You guys just have at it. And it's like, okay. But no, they wanted it the way that it went, and I was happy about it. That's the only other debate that I've seen. So I don't know if the others are that way, but that's definitely how I felt about it. I enjoyed it very much. Very much.
It was a good listen.
Thank you. It's only the second debate I've ever done. I think I'm 2-0, I think. So, yeah. I just want to tell you all, the first person I debated was Preston Guy. I just want to remind you all of this when we get into the season. Preston and I have had several really good, awesome conversations since Brian Kelly's firing. And I really appreciated his openness and his willingness to not just do a mea culpa, but just, let me get to know him a little bit as a dude. So I won't be jumping into LSU. And I wasn't going to do it anyway, because the whole point, it was never about LSU. It was always about Brian Kelly. But I just want to let you guys know, if some of y'all still plan on jumping into their chats to give them a hard time if LSU loses games next year, I've grown to have a lot of respect for Preston since that whole thing went down. And I think he sees things from my point of view a lot better now than maybe he did before. So I'll just be nice to him if you're going to jump in their shows next year after LSU games. All right, let's get down to this one.
From Sean Stewart, having never been to Notre Dame to see a game, which area of the stadium would be the best to watch the game from? It depends on how you like to watch the game, Sean. I like the end zone view because I like to see, again, I think I watch football games a little bit differently than what a fan would. So I like to see the end zone view of shifts, alignment, things that you can't really get to see from like the press box angle too much. So I like the end zone view. Really, and I know this is going to sound like a cliche, Notre Dame Stadium, though, in my opinion, is one of those where there's no bad seat in the house. I mean, I've sat everywhere in that stadium through all the games that I've gone to. The season tickets we had in 2023 was like a few rows above the tunnel where they ran out. That was awesome. When my dad and I went to see the Pitt game in 2012, we were like top right corner, the same side as Touchdown Jesus. When we were at the UCLA game, we were down in the lower bowl, but on the opposite side of the tunnel. When we were at the Indiana game, we were at the 30-yard line press box side where you guys were sitting, just obviously lower. I've never sat in a seat there where I'm like, yeah, I can't really see anything that's going on. So there's really not a bad spot, to be honest with you.
The only potential for a bad spot, Trev, and you agree with this, is if you're someone who definitely wants to be able to easily look at the scoreboard. Then obviously you won't want to be on that side. I don't care as much about that. You have to turn around to see it like that. But as far as like watching the game, I agree with Trevor. There's really not a bad seat in the house. Then it comes down to personal preference. Some people like being higher. Some people like being lower. I like being higher. The reason I don't like being lower is because there's so many people around the field now at Notre Dame games that if there's places where you're too low, where you're kind of looking kind of a little bit right over top of people. Some people love that. Some people love that view. That comes down to personal preference. But I think anything on the sides is perfect for me because anywhere on the sides, you can see the scoreboard easily. Sides and then all the way around to the end. I don't love watching games from the end zone view. Some people love it. That comes down to personal preference. You know what I mean? But like, even if you're in the end zone view, you can see everything. It's a great view. That's what I love about bowl designs of stadiums. I think the bowl designs are the best. The ones that are kind of like squared off, blocked off, like you can get some bad spots. The multi-purpose stadiums, like old Riverfront, had some bad places to watch baseball games and that were then good for football, and some spots that were bad for football but good for baseball. I think that Notre Dame is designed really well to where there really isn't a bad seat in the house, unless you just love looking at the scoreboard all the time.
Sure.
Then you're just not going to have your back to it. So that's where I'm at. I don't personally look at the scoreboard much because we're in the press box. We have a TV. It's a different situation, but that's my thoughts on it, Trev. And that's why I think one of the many great things about Notre Dame Stadium is I really just don't think there's a bad seat in the house.
One stadium that I actually had a really pleasant experience in, minus the fan interactions, and I dogged on them last week, but I went to the shoe to like watching it. I was at the 22 Ohio State game. And I was kind of nervous because we were up there, man. Like the air was thinner. I mean, the Horseshoe is a massive stadium.
Yes.
But we were up in one of the corners, like near the top, and I was nervous. I was like, I don't even know if we're going to be able to see it, but at least we'll be a part of the environment.
Yeah,
that's another stadium where I don't think that there's a bad seat in the house. I mean, it was because of the design of the stadium. It was I liked it a lot. So that was a good experience, minus the people interaction.
Yes, if you could just remove the Ohio State fans from that experience, it'd be much better.
Yeah. If I was there by myself up in that corner, I mean, it would have been awesome.
The other problem with kind of sitting on with the scoreboard to your back is you're a lot closer to the opposing team's fan base.
Yeah, you are.
Which, if it's a close game, that could be a little bit annoying. If it's a Syracuse game, that matters for about 2.5 minutes, and then they're not saying nothing.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking about pregame, and then walking out for the opening kickoff. They were probably a little chatty. When they had the good opening return, right? They're probably and then after that, it was downhill.
Where my dad and I sat for the Indiana game was pretty close to the Indiana section. And I had some fun after Jeremiah Love's 98-yard touchdown run. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
From AFMOS, will getting the best 5 offensive linemen on the field be enough to get us a deep playoff run and the footwork and attention to detail on the offensive line doesn't improve? Essentially, can we out-talent playoff teams?
Yes. If they get the best 5 on the field, the 5 guys we talked about earlier, or inserting Jagasol in for somebody, if he's healthy. But even if Jagasol is not healthy and it's Black, Knapp, Craig, Absher, and Lambert, that's if Sullivan Absher is your 5th most talented offensive lineman, you have a very talented offensive line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was impressed, but impressed compared to who? Like he was pretty good. And I still will say, I think the best performance we saw all season from the offensive line was in a game where he started. You could argue maybe second best. You could argue maybe Pitt was the best. But Joe Otting was definitely in both games where I think the O-line played the best, USC and Pitt, and then Sullivan started in another one of them. So I think it does have that. And it does.
Yeah.
But I
We'll see
also
that
expect the footwork and stuff to improve because some guys will be older and they'll pick some of that stuff up.
And some guys will be playing their more natural position. I think naturally moving Anthony Knapp inside will increase his footwork, improve his footwork for sure.
Well, and then just watching him just throw up 585 on the squat today, you're like, dude, he's going to be a dog inside. It's going to it just reminded me of him doing 585 is not what, but just watch him do 585. You just are reminded how powerful he is when he gets to react in quick areas. I just think of him exploding off the ball and driving Mikhail Kamara off the ball on that 98-yard touchdown run. He's going to get to do that way more often as a guard.
Yep.
And you start getting fired up about it. And Will Black is a freaky talent. And so is Gerby Lambert. I mean, you've got now potentially 3 big-time first-round talents in your starting offensive line next year. And 4 if Jagasol comes back healthy.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for all the knee injuries, I'd say Ashton Craig. If Ashton Craig would have played the last 27 games and not got hurt, I'd be like, he's a day 2 pick.
Well, I was about to say, I mean, there's a chance if Ashton Craig played the last 27 games and didn't get hurt, we might be talking about him as one of the guys that would also be performing this Sunday too.
That's true.
There's a chance.
At the combine. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a really good point, Trev.
From Jay Melvin, since we play him in week 1, Brian, what happened to Luke Fickell? He used to be really good at Cincinnati, kind of like Coach Marcus Freeman. Why has he went so downhill and failed to replicate his success at Wisconsin?
Couple reasons. Number one, 3 reasons. Number one is I just think certain coaches are built for certain levels. And I think Luke Fickell was in his element at Cincinnati. It's his home state. He can dominate recruiting Ohio. He had built great relationships in that state for 20 years. It's more on his level of his talent. That's number one. Number 2, he made great hires at Cincinnati. I mean, a big reason why he was successful is a big reason why Notre Dame is successful now. Marcus Freeman, Mike Mickens, Mike Denbrock, Gino Guidugli. I mean, all those guys were with him at Cincinnati. Mike Brown. Brian Mason was his strength. It was his special teams. You know what I mean? A lot of the coaches that built that success, Marcus Freeman brought with him to Notre Dame, and that's what they're winning now. I don't think he has, and the third reason is I don't think he has replicated those hires at Wisconsin. And I think he's still paying for his decision to hire Phil Longo as his first offensive coordinator. I think they're still recovering from that. They went away from what made Wisconsin. And I've heard some things about how he doesn't recruit the state very hard and he just hasn't built up those good relationships with high school coaches. I think that's a big mistake. Your offensive line should primarily be built, if not exclusively be built, from Wisconsin and Illinois kids when you're at Wisconsin. And he just hasn't prioritized them. So I don't think he knew how to win at Wisconsin. I don't think he made good hires. And I think going to Phil Longo, which meant going away from big boy power football and into this air raid type of thing, was a disaster of a hire. And I don't think they've recovered from that. But the boosters went all in this offseason for him and got him a good roster. And he's made some, in my opinion, some decent coaching change hires. He's recovered from some of those. I don't know that I necessarily think the coaching staff is anywhere nearly as good as what it was when he was at Cincinnati, but they're better now than his first staff, in my opinion. Jeff Grimes is a solid offensive coordinator. Mike Tressel's a good football coach. So there's some better coaches there. Now it's about can you recover from the mistakes that you made. I actually think Wisconsin's going to be a better team this year. I know Travis publicly said that already. I agree with him. I think Wisconsin's going to be improved. I think they have a shot to be a bowl team this year. And the other thing that kind of hurt them is their schedule last year was ridiculously, stupidly hard. The Big Ten, it's what did Luke Fickell do to you? Honestly, did he upset you? Show me where he hurt you. On top of playing at Alabama, they had to play at Michigan, at Oregon, at Indiana, at Minnesota. Then they had home games against Maryland, Iowa, Ohio State, Washington, and Illinois. Other than Penn State, they played every other top 8 team in the Big Ten last year. You know what I mean? It's like, what did they do to you? Schedule alone makes them last year a 6-16. You know, like remove one of Ohio State, Oregon, or Indiana and replace it with Northwestern, and I think they might win that game. You know, replace another one of those teams with Purdue or Michigan State, and next thing you know, they're 6-6. So I think they're going to be an improved team this year. Improved in that Notre Dame will still smack them. The best teams will still smack them, but they're going to win more games. So I think those are the reasons why. What say you, Trevor?
Yeah, the biggest thing is he went away from the identity of Wisconsin football. When you think Big Ten, you think of Smash Mouth, you think of the university that produced guys like Melvin Gordon and Jonathan Taylor and players like that, Monte Ball, not West Coast RPO style football. I mean, look, when teams like Oregon and USC, schools known for producing quarterbacks and wide receivers, and coaches like Dan Lanning and Lane Kiffin and Lincoln Riley are willing to make the switch to being more run focused. We watched that shift with Lincoln Riley and Dan Lanning over the last couple seasons. And Luke Fickell from Cincinnati was not willing to make that switch until this year. I think that's kind of the lag effect. So the biggest thing was getting away from that identity. And based on some of their roster acquisitions, talk about in the portal, I think they're going to try to get back to that. I don't think it's a coincidence they picked up a dual threat quarterback like Colton Joseph to go along with the host of running backs that they returned, and they got Brian Jackson from USC and Abu Sama II from Iowa State. So
we're big backs.
Yes.
I mean, especially Brian Jackson. I mean, yes. I mean, he's a big back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't think that that's a coincidence that they want to get back to that. Now, that being said, I am high on Wisconsin, like Brian said. I don't see them going 9-3 or 10-2, but 7-5, you know, somewhere in that range. If they reach their ceiling, like an 8-4 team, where it's like, I think come October, there will be some Big Ten teams on the schedule that look and be like, ooh, we got to go play up in Madison in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
They're kind of.
And they've given teams some tough November games the last 2 years too, Trev.
Shoot,
you know, if you look at it,
I mean,
yeah, well, Oregon this year, and then the year before, wasn't it Penn State? Didn't they almost beat Penn State the year before?
I think it was Oregon in back-to-back years.
Oregon as well, but Penn State beat Penn State beat them 28-13. But if I remember correctly, that game was very close, and then Penn State pulled away late. Yes, Penn State scored 14 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. It was 14-13 going into the fourth quarter. And then, as you mentioned, the game that you've brought up before, they had Oregon on the ropes last year. Oregon, last 2 years. 2 years ago at home, Oregon beat them 16-13. This year, Oregon beat them 21-7, but it was a lot closer than 21-7. You know, and so like they've gotten better late in the year. I mean, Indiana beat them 31-7, but I think it was like 10-7 at halftime.
Yeah, it was.
Like they played them way more competitively than Alabama or Oregon did.
Yeah.
So they've been one of those teams that has gotten better as the year goes on. This year they'll hopefully be better from the beginning. But the big key is they've got to keep Colton Joseph healthy.
Yeah.
They're a different team 2 years ago if Billy Edwards doesn't get hurt. Or excuse me, last year if Billy Edwards doesn't get hurt. I think. It was this year that Billy Edwards transferred there, correct? And got hurt like in the first game.
That is
Wasn't
correct.
that this year? Yeah.
Yep.
So I maybe they win one or two more games if he doesn't get hurt. You know, like I think they might have been able to pull off a win or two if he doesn't get hurt. He's an okay quarterback, but it's way better than what they had once he went down. They're just not built for losing their quarterback. It's a really good question, Jay Melvin. Really good question. Here's an interesting one, Trev.
From Jaron Meinzen, what is your confidence level 1 through 10 that Notre Dame will get Greathouse involved this year?
10, that they'll get him involved. The question is going to be how much more involved. I think that's really where my confidence is like a 5. Will they get him as involved as they did in like the postseason of 2024? I'm at like a 4 or 5. I got to see it. To get him involved, that's a 10. I mean, he's going to start and he's going to play a bunch and he won't have Will Pauling taking reps away. So he'll play more. The question is, Does he get back to the 2024 production, or is there a jump even further? That's what I think the question is. He'll be involved. More involved than he has been. That's where my number gets down to like 4 or 5, Trev. Does that make sense? He's not gonna catch 4 passes in the first 4 games this year. Like that's to me something I absolutely guarantee. Will it still look a lot like it did 24, or is there another level beyond that for him? That's the question for me. Assuming he's healthy.
Yeah, this one's tough. I'm at like an 8 or a 9. I'm not all the way at 10 yet. Do I think he'll get more involved? Like get involved? I think so. But at this time last year, if you would have told me that Will Pauling was taking exclusive reps away from Jaden Greathouse, I also wouldn't have believed you then. And I mean, is it crazy to think that somebody that's more physically gifted than Will Pauling and a Mylan Graham starts taking reps away from him? Based on what I saw last year, I can't say that it would surprise me. It would surprise me in that Jaden Greathouse elected to come back, and he is now academically a senior. He's a redshirt junior, so it should make sense that Jaden Greathouse gets the lion's share of being involved. But I also thought that last year at this time when I watched him decimate Penn State and Ohio State secondary in the second half of that game, and then this past season was what it was. So I'm not all the way at a 10, but I'm at like 8 or 9. I mean, keep in mind, Jaden Greathouse is one of the players that I also predicted to have a breakout year like earlier this week. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I also kind of have to think that for him to come back, there had to be some conversations where they were able to tell him, this is why we need you to do this. But then also he got some assurances that there is that belief in him. If Notre Dame didn't have faith in Jaden Greathouse, they could have easily convinced him to leave. Like, especially once, they knew they were going to get Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter. They could have easily convinced him to leave. I think that's part of it too. I just don't know if there's another level for him in how they view him. I'm not saying they don't. I'm saying I don't know. Last year really shook my thought process on how the staff evaluates Jaden Greathouse. Watching the receivers coach basically try to phase him into a backup role for Will Pauling was like, okay, something's missing here. Something's really missing here.
Agreed. Super chat from ND Gold Rush. Appreciate you. We added another Irish fan in January. Opal May and Mama are doing great. Go Irish.
ND Gold Rush. That's absolutely awesome, man. I'd be very curious. Like, is that like after somebody? Like, that's something I'm always fascinated by when people give the names of their kids. Like, what is the meaning behind it? Like, my middle name, I was named after my dad's first boss, who really took him under his wing and was a mentor to him. His name was what my middle name is. I always think those are kind of cool. So I'd be very curious what the name is. But do me a favor, also, if you could shoot me an email, just say, hey, this is whatever your name is. I'm reaching. You asked me to email you, so just do me a favor and email me when you get a chance as well. But congratulations! Can't have enough Irish fans, Trev. Can't have enough Irish fans, man. We need to raise the rate of children being born in the United States, right? Especially Notre Dame fans. We need to be pumping out more and more and more Notre Dame fans. So let's do it.
Yeah,
let's absolutely
100%. 100%. I'm on board with that. Super chat from Jersey Bear. Appreciate you. How do you think Kirby Moore will do at Washington State? I like what he did in the portal with UC Davis quarterback and SEC D lineman plus roster retention.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know how he's going to do because he's never been a head coach before. But I'll tell you this, if Mike Denbrock chose to stay at LSU, Kirby Moore probably would have been Notre Dame's offensive coordinator in 2024. They were close. So like they were in kind of not deep into talks, but they were in serious talks with him. I was told that. I believe Pete Sampson also reported that. And I've told you guys before, if me, John Bryce, Pete Sampson, guys like that, if we tell you, hey, this is happening, then you can assume that came from a pretty good source. And I was told on the Missouri and the Notre Dame side. So the interesting thing is he had a contract extension on his desk, essentially, that said, hey, if you want to take this job, we want to re-sign you at Missouri. We want to keep you. We get this pay raise, and he wouldn't sign it. because and I actually give him a lot of credit for this. He would not sign it until he could commit to them. He wasn't going to sign it and then use that, like, leave for Notre Dame a week later, which I respect, because Notre Dame, he was having some good talks with Notre Dame. Then the Denbrock stuff went down, and that was, once Denbrock got involved, it was a wrap, because that was always Marcus Freeman's number one wish list guy. So I actually had a chance to study that offense quite a bit during that process, and I liked it. I think they're good scheme, relatively well coached. I think he did some really nice things there. I don't know enough about him as a coach to know what kind of head coach he's going to be. But if he's as good of a head coach as he was an offensive coordinator and a recruiter, I think he'll do some good things at Washington State. I really do. And like you said, I think that they did a nice job in how they put this roster together. Find that under the radar FCS quarterback that can come to the next level and thrive, like they did with Cam Ward. Where did John Mateer was always at Washington State, correct? He wasn't a transfer from somewhere else, was he?
Correct. John Mateer caught a pass from Cam Ward once.
Yeah, like he was a high school kid, but like you find that under the radar kid, right? You find that JUCO kid, that FCS transfer, and then develop them. And that's what they got Cam Ward from Incarnate Word, right? Isn't that where he played at IC, didn't he? You find John Mateer, some 2-3 star ranked kid, develop him, and then hopefully you have a system in place that can allow you to retain some of those kids. That'll be the big key. That'll be the big one. Good question.
My one tie to Washington State. Lauren has a cousin that's an offensive lineman at Washington State. Nick Bakken. Yeah, currently he's I think he's going to be a redshirt freshman. He transferred from South Dakota State. He's a big boy.
Very nice. Very nice.
Another super chat from Jersey Bear. Appreciate you. Also, great job on Crane & Co. You were 100% correct. These anti-Notre Dame arguments are emotional and not factual. Appreciate BD, Trevor, and IB.
Well, it's my pleasure. I enjoyed it. Again, like I said, I appreciated the format that they gave us. It was a fun debate. I enjoyed myself very much. Yeah, I think we've talked enough about that. It was fun. It was fun. I think we've pretty much nailed, between that debate and then you and I talking about it yesterday, I think we've kind of knocked that out of the park. It's just at this point in time, there's just some people whose opinion you're not going to change because they're just going to make emotional fan remarks. They don't actually have a reason that Notre Dame should join a conference other than what they were told by their favorite podcaster, who also has no clue what he's talking about.
Correct.
But we appreciate you, man.
From Trev's buy, sell, hold glasses. Would you rather have a dominant defensive tackle, defensive end, or have a dominant linebacker or a dominant cornerback and safety?
I'm always about building up front, Trev. An elite D line can make solid linebackers and DBs look great. You could have the best secondary in the country, but if you can't get pressure on the quarterback, that secondary is going to get beat. Perfect example: Notre Dame's first 2 games last year. You know what I mean? There were some other problems, especially at nickel, but that was a big problem.
Yeah, the prime example is just the Notre Dame-Miami game from this year, and really Miami's defense all season. They had good players in the secondary, but with all due respect, O.J. Frederick doesn't hold a candle to Leonard Moore. He doesn't. And I have no issue saying that publicly. But what was the difference? Oh, yeah, Akeem Mesidor and Reuben Bain and Justin Scott and Ahmed Moten and Marquise Lightfoot. And you know what I mean? So just all the waves of players that they could throw at you. I'm with you. I'm trenches 100%.
All right, Trev, let's do one more here from your biggest fan before we jump into part 3 of today's show.
Another one from Trev. There was pushback on Marty Biagi having the punter kick rugby style. What's the difference and what's the usefulness of it in the punting game?
Well, if done correctly, it really does a job of eliminating potential returns. And there's really 2 ways to limit returns. One is to have great hang time with great gunners. So guys are getting close to you, the ball's hanging up in the air, and you're not going to get any return. That's what we saw this year. And that's what I thought James Rendell did a great job of this year, Trev, is even when he didn't necessarily kick it super far, wherever it got caught, that's where it was going to be because you weren't getting a whole lot of hang time. You know, he had 25 punts this year. Opponents returned 2 of those. That's it. And so his net average was his net was almost identical to his. So there's 2 ways to evaluate punting average, and the one that you should care about is the net average. So if you kick it 60 yards, but they return it 15, your net average is 45. His net average was almost identical to his main average because he only allowed 2 returns for 11 yards all year. And so that works. The other way to limit returns is to have a rugby style kick, which allows guys to get downfield to a greater degree. You kind of line drive it. It's harder for a guy to run up on unless it's right to him. And in theory, it can limit returns. I don't love that one though, to be honest with you, unless you just don't have a kid that can kick with height. In 2024, James Rendell had 50 total punts, and 20 of them got returned for 83 yards. So only 4.2 yards per return, which Notre Dame was pretty highly ranked in that regard. That season, they were, let's see here, opponent punt returns in 2024. I'm going to look this up real quick. Notre Dame ranked 4th this year in fewest yards allowed in punt returns, 11. In 2024, they ranked 48th. Now, in fewest yards per attempt, they were pretty good. They were 15th in fewest yards per attempt allowed, which means they covered well, but they still ranked 48th in yards returned because 20 of them got returned. They ranked last year 104th in most returns. Now, part of that is because they played 16 games, but still, you allowed over 1 per game. This year, they allowed 2 all year. And so I just felt James Rendell, I mean, Trev, I remember that practice we were at in fall camp and his first year, and we're like, holy moly. Everything he did this year, we saw in fall camp of 2024. Yep. But Biaggi had just decided this is what they're going to do, and so did Marcus Freeman. And I wonder if part of it was to somewhat protect James Rendell, first year playing American football. Maybe, I don't know. I still felt even in 2024 when they let him kick it, he was still pretty good. So I just think it was a strategic thing. But when you've got a kid with that kind of leg, you do it less. The other way to rugby punt is the occasional rugby punt can be used to limit block opportunities depending on what certain teams are doing to come at you. If you do it right, it can somewhat slow down or negate a team's ability to come at you with a block. That also factors in. I'm sorry, I was watching the combines on, and they had the DB from LSU's puppy was on there. They had a picture of his puppy, so I got a little bit distracted. So sorry. You can take us to part 3 now.
Getting into part 3 of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the Friday free-for-all mailbag going on and getting us kicked off here in part 3 is our guy, Tommy Toughnuts. Can you rank?
Yeah, that's one we did earlier. That's my bad. I meant to bring up this one from Tommy. Apologies.
No worries. Food question, true or false? A hot dog is not a sandwich. Rather, it's a taco.
I'm going to sell that. That's false, I should say. I understand the debate. It looks more like a taco, but it's bread with meat in it. That's a sandwich to me. A taco is it's just a different type of wrapping around it. I don't really care if you want to call it a taco. You can call it a taco. It's a sandwich to me. Or it's just a completely different thing that you call a taco. You know what I mean? Like some things, you call it a hot dog. I don't know, like shawarma. I don't know what category I'd put that in except just shawarma. It's like, I don't know that I'd call a gyro a taco, even though it's kind of shaped like a taco, depending on where you get it from. It's just a gyro. So if I had to put it into a category, I'd put it as a sandwich because it's bread with meat on the inside. That's the way I look at it. But honestly, whatever you want to call it, man. If it makes you feel better to call it an American taco, call it an American taco. It's fine by me. It's a sandwich to me. But I usually just call it a hot dog.
It's closer to like a submarine sandwich because a lot of the argument is like, well, the bun is connected, and it's like, well, it is on a submarine sandwich too. So it's closer to a sandwich than it is a taco because at least it's still bread. A taco's a tortilla shell. That's its own thing.
Yeah. Whether it's corn or flour, it's still a very different type of thing. Yes, agree.
From Bobby S, what are your thoughts on? Oh gosh, I tried to pronounce his name earlier when we were watching his film. Fuller Run Show. I'm going to go with that. The defensive tackle from Illinois. Yeah. What are your thoughts on him? And then do you see his new rank on 3? Do you see him as that elite or more like the other services? How good a combo would him and Parks be?
Bobby, here, 2 things. Number one, I personally would not rank him that high on his current grade. But if I was doing my grades the way that on 3 does, I'd consider having him that high. Because you got to remember the way that I do grades is my current grade is different than my upside grade. So, Trevor and I were actually watching his film together today. We went through a bunch of film today. We're having, just evaluating, giving, hey, what do you think about this kid, that kid? It's a lot of fun. He's raw right now. Like, Trev pointed out in our film breakdown of him, like he stands up a lot at times. He'll just kind of stand up. He'll lose his base. There's a lot of technical work needed because he's a young defensive lineman. A lot of young defensive linemen need technical work, but the tools are elite. He's got a great frame. He's super explosive off the line. He's got super powerful hands. You don't see a lot of defensive linemen that combine the burst and the power that he brings to the table. He's a really impressive kid. So if I was combining the current and upside grade, he's a top 25 player. I just do it a little bit differently. So I have no problem with him ranking him that high. It's kind of like Grayson McHugh last year. When they ranked him as a 5-star early, I was like, yeah, I can't go there now. Even as a senior, I was like, I can't rank him as a top 10 player personally because my ranking is off of current grade. But when you throw the upside of what he can be, I had no problem with them ranking him in the top 10 because their rank, the way they rank is different than the way that I rank. I do like a tiered kind of ranking. And the way that they do it, which is all, you can't evaluate them ranking guys based on how I rank a guy because it's a different process. How they rank, I think that's a fair ranking. Anything in the top 25, I think is fair when you're already incorporating upside into the grade. That's what I think. And that combo between those two would be elite. This is something that I'm going to write an article about this at Irish Breakdown, but Trev and I were talking about this. If they only sign D linemen from Chicago the next 2 years, they'll have an elite D line haul the next 2 years. Because you've got Parks and Fuller Runshoe this year. Next year, you've got Cam McGee, Darian Prescott, and Caleb Tucker. Like the state of the city of Chicago and the surrounding areas like Bolingbrook is loaded with big time D linemen in 27 and 28. Loaded. So yeah, you got to clean up in Chicago. Got to clean up. We might actually talk about this in a show soon, Trev, but yeah, that'd be an elite combo to me. I love Braden Parks. We were watching him today a little bit too because he was a teammate of Cam McGee. But yeah, you get those 2 guys. That's 2 big-time football players. Big-time football. Give me the 2 Chicago kids in D tackle this year and the 2 Chicago kids that end in 2028, and I'm a happy dude. I'm a happy dude.
Yeah. Fuller Runshow's highlights were very, very fun to watch. And on the snaps where he kind of does put it together technically, there's just no stopping him.
No, it's unfair. It's literally unfair.
Insanely strong at the point of attack, great hands when he uses them. Because other times, just like, hey, bud, I'm just significantly better than you are, which you see that a lot with high school kids at that age. But when he does get everything kind of aligned and he plays technically sound, there's just no stopping him.
Yeah, if you get Parks and Fuller Runshoe and Abraham Cisse, I don't care who you get as the other end in this class. I really don't. I don't. That's a heck of a DN class right there. But yeah, we'll see how that one goes. Here's one from Salty Virginia Peanuts.
The NCAA has proposed serious penalties for head coaches who engage in the, quote, shadow portal. Star transfers outside of the portal window. For Xavier Lucas, will it work?
Depends on whether or not they get sued. So like shadow portal, essentially, Trev, if I'm correct on this, and please, if I'm not, correct me, correct it. The shadow portal, because they got rid of the spring portal. So basically what some players are threatening to do is they will unenroll from the school that they're in and then enroll somewhere else. You can't be on scholarship if you do that. But basically, I can still give you all the NIL money in the world, and then it doesn't matter if you're on scholarship because we'll just give you whatever it costs for you to go to school, pay your own way. And there's technically nothing the NCAA can stop a player from doing that. So what they're saying is, fine, players can do whatever they want. We can't stop it, but we're going to punish the schools who take those kids. Somebody's going to sue them for this. And then it just comes down to, can they win the lawsuit or not? But the only reason they have to make this rule is because there's no rules. Because people don't respect the rules that are given. The institutions that give the NCAA their authority say, we want you to enforce what the rules are, except when it happens to us. And that's why you keep having these lawsuits. They're basically suing themselves. The schools are suing themselves because they're the ones that the NCAA is made up of the schools. They give the schools the authority. They want people to crack down on rules, but not when we do it. Somebody will sue them. And I think what I'll say is, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how this is going to work. An antitrust lawyer would be able to much better explain this, and some of them think they're going to lose. I'll say this: I think the fact that they're not doing anything to the play, hey, you can unenroll and enroll somewhere else, but and basically the kid could still play there. If I'm correct, it won't stop the kid from playing, but they'll basically say you can't take any. You'll get fined. You'll have restrictions on how many portal kids you can take next year, that kind of thing, which is something I've advocated for. I've advocated for treating the transfer portal like the international baseball market. I don't know if it's still this way. I don't know how much you follow baseball, but when I was really big into baseball, Trev, 8-10 years ago, I mean, dude, I have like 4 fantasy teams, and I'd know the stats of all the top Reds prospects and all that kind of stuff. If you broke the rules in the international market, which means, you're trying to sign kids from the Dominican, Venezuela, New Mexico, whatever, the Japanese players, Korean players, there were certain rules. It had to be a certain age. You couldn't have certain interactions. You couldn't go above a certain amount of money to spend. If you broke those rules, you would lose the right to sign international players the next year. And I've advocated, say, look, teams tamper, teams break rules. Fine, you can take that kid because we're not going to limit a kid's ability to do that. But next year, you can't take any portal kids. So that way, all these kids can jump in the portal and go wherever they want. But just know that school won't be an option for any portal kids next year. It's kind of like, or at least diminish it kind of thing. I think that's the only hope that they have. Because now they have to get sued by member institutions, not a player. So it'll be interesting. I think I have that correct on how that would work. Because I don't think they're setting rules saying, like, you can't stop a kid. Because if they say you can't transfer, that's when they get sued and they lose. But they're saying, look, kid can unenroll, enroll somewhere else. But the school's going to get punished for it. And you can play, but the school's going to get punished for it. I believe that's how it goes. You guys can all correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe that's how the rule is, how basically their threat is being promoted, I believe.
Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. The biggest thing that they want to try to avoid from everything that I've read is head coaches initiating that conversation, basically. Like, that's where the penalties for the head coach would come in. I don't know what some of the repercussions would be for the school itself, because I think it'd be a very easy court case for the school to win if they're like, hey, look, we didn't tell him to transfer here. This is just where he elected to transfer to. I think a lot of the penalty will be back on the head coach of if there's documented messages or phone calls being like, hey, if you come here, we can give you this and we can give you this, but like, we can't,
Well, in theory, there's no way to avoid contact with the kid for him to show up at your school. Like, that's where the punishment is.
Yeah.
Like, well, we didn't tell him to get in the portal. Yeah, but you had to have a conversation with him to get it there. So that's going to be, it's going to be, so like, it's like somebody brought up the Xavier Lucas thing last year, and it would be basically saying, like, look, we're not going to go out. The mistake they made last year is they went after Xavier Lucas. Now it's like, what they should have always done is they should have gone after Miami. But you're leaving one school to sue another school. It needs to be the NCAA being the ones that crack down on it. So that'll be the key. Dalen Everett just ran a 4.38. It's another Virginia kid. I'm telling you, man, that's where the best athletes are, Trev. I keep trying to tell you. All right, let's get down to another one from Salty. Let's see here.
Did you know that a principal driver for the USC Notre Dame annual rivalry game, RIP for now, was the friendship between the wives of the athletic directors and their lobbying for it?
No, but Salty keeps putting this up like every single mailbag, so I figured we just bring it up so we can read it, and then he can stop putting that question in because no, I didn't know that, nor do I care. So, yeah.
Now, I thought a lot of it was because like Newt Rockney's wife wanted to like vacation out in the
that was
West
a big
Coast.
part of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it continued, I guess, with the AD wives. Yeah, not sure. All right. So, Trev, I kind of commented on this. Let's talk a little bit more about it. Who will most likely be the next Alabama quarterback, Keelan Russell or Austin Mack, and why? I don't know that we necessarily answered this question other than saying I think Mack starts early and then Russell takes over. But what are your thoughts on this? Who do you think wins that battle ultimately?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Austin Mack. I think Kalen DeBoer, especially Ryan Grubb, the two coaches who recruited Austin Mack to Washington, I think they're going to kind of side with the player that they brought in to be their next Michael Penix. Now, I love the talent with Keelan Russell, but I think some of that's going to go to the kid that now has multiple years in the system. I know Keelan Russell will have too, but I'm talking going back to the Washington days of multiple years of experience with Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb. Both are extremely talented. I think Keelan Russell has a higher ceiling, but I think for this upcoming season, I think Austin Mack is going to be their starter. So that's who I would go with. It wouldn't surprise me in any way if they kind of did what they did with Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence and started working in Keelan Russell, but I don't know if Kalen DeBoer has a history of like rotating quarterbacks. Personally, I'm not a fan of it anyways. So I think if Austin Mack wins the job, I think he'll just be their starter for this season. Because there were moments last year where when Ty Simpson got that look in his eye, people were kind of like, okay, is this when we see Austin Mack or Keelan Russell?
Mm-hmm.
And they were pretty steadfast with it. Outside of when they were getting the break speed out of them by Indiana, they put in Austin Mack for a little bit. But he's probably my favorite to win this job.
I would, if I had to pick a guy now, as I said earlier, I do think I'd probably pick Austin Mack because of his experience. This will be his fourth year in the system, and he's played. I just don't know that he's going to be able to hold on to that job all year. I think at some point in time, Keelan Russell's talent is just too good, and once he like really locks in on the system, I think eventually he takes over.
Yeah,
I just don't know when that's going to be because that talent, it's kind of like, you know, he's like the Thanos of that quarterback room. I'm inevitable. As long as he can, you know what I mean? Like that talent is inevitable. It's just about, can he get the offense down? Can he lead? And that's the question for every young quarterback. But his talent is really outstanding. Really. I actually thought he was a better high school quarterback prospect than Bryce Underwood. I actually liked Keelan a little bit more than Bryce Underwood. And because everybody, he's generational. He's a really good player. Really good player. Now, speaking of Alabama, from Salty, said last season Alabama rushed for 104.1 yards per game, 125th in Division I college football. Is there any way DeBoer could survive a second such rushing season? And I think, Trev, your point is no.
Big picture, no. I mean, it depends on what it looks like. I mean, if they make a run in the playoffs by rushing for that much, but they're first in the country in passing yards and yards per attempt and passing touchdowns, maybe. But I think that's kind of an outlier, and it's not as likely. I mean, they were, fifth in the country this past year in passing yards per game, and they were what they were. So big picture, no, I don't think he could survive another season like this. And that's not Kalen DeBoer specific. You can't go away from running the football. Now, there are some years at Notre Dame even where that gets taken a little bit too far, and it's like, hey, let's try to push the ball down the field a little bit. But I don't think any team can survive not running the football. You know, like there's reasons why like Western Kentucky is not competing for a spot in the college football playoffs as an at-large bid for the G5. You got to be able to run the football in some capacity.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm sorry, Trev. Go ahead.
No, you're good, man. Like especially with how last season ended with Alabama. Like if they would have made a run, or even if they just didn't lose to Alabama or Georgia that bad in the SEC championship game, and if they didn't get the doors blown off of them against Indiana, maybe.
Yeah.
But with how emphatically bad their season ended, I don't think he can survive it.
My thing is, Trevor, I just don't think you can consistently win games at the biggest stage when you just know you're just not going to run the ball in these games. You're not going to try to run the ball in these games. You're going to win some games. They beat Missouri without it. They beat Vanderbilt without it. They beat Tennessee without it. But those were, as we found out, those were very overrated football teams. They were only ranked that high because they were in the SEC. They weren't actually that good of football teams. But then when they played Georgia, they played Oklahoma even. They played, Oklahoma handed them that game. Oklahoma was up 17-0. That game was basically about to be over. And then Oklahoma just peed down their leg and choked that game away. Let's be honest about that. They choked that game away. Mateer threw a pick six on a play where there was not an Oklahoma player on the screen when the Alabama guy caught the ball. The punter just drops a ball to the point where it was so bad that people were like, I think that guy was paid off. You know what I mean? Like, look at Trev. And he's not joking like that. It's like, dude, if he was going to get paid off, it would kind of look a lot like that. It just, you didn't win that game. Oklahoma lost that game. And then you went out the next game and got annihilated. And when you saw that it was going to be a wet field, you just knew Bama has no chance in this game because they're not going to be able to just go lean on the run game. Like Indiana just ran the ball down Alabama's throat in that game because the weather wasn't great, so they didn't try to throw the ball a ton that game. We've talked a lot about how he wasn't dominant in the postseason from a yard standpoint. Well, part of that was you had a blowout in the semifinals. You were going to throw the ball a lot there. But the first game they played in was in pretty bad wet field. And so they rightly leaned heavily towards, the ability to run the football. Well, Alabama couldn't do that. And that's why they were cooked. One of many reasons why they were cooked. So yeah. I just don't think you can consistently win big games that way, Trev. I just don't. LSU's going to be a lot harder to beat this year if you can't run the ball than they were last year.
Correct.
Last 2 years.
100% true. Now, FanDuel doesn't have their win totals out yet. They only have win totals out for 3 teams this year. But, Brian, after looking at Alabama's schedule, like we have done, what would you set their over-under win total at?
I'd probably go 9.5 is what I'd set it at. Yeah. That's what I would do. Yep. All right. Let's do here. We got one from, let's see. We did this Frank G one about where would you guys suggest go to games for Sunday? And we did that one.
Yes,
right?
Sir.
Okay. All right. This one will be good.
Another one from Frank G, which, by the way, Frank, one place I forgot to mention, it's close to Notre Dame's campus. I think it's called Tap House on the Edge. It's another solid place to go watch a game, and they have pretty decent food there as well. I would also look to check that out.
I've heard of that. Where's that one at?
I think it's like it's over by Twickenham.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, my dad and I go there to get food before every game that we go to together. It's a solid spot.
Yeah.
That
sounds familiar.
To catch a game.
Remember we talking yesterday about that real analytics and what they said guys were going to run at the combine today? They said Damani Jackson was going to run like a 4.2 flat to like a 4.25. He just ran an unofficial 4.41. So they're a little off on that one. A little off. Yeah. But now, if it gets, it's still fast, and it might get official down to like 4.38 or something like that. But that's well off of a 4.2 flat to 4.25.
Little bit far away from breaking the all-time 40-yard dash record at the combine. Yeah. Little off. But from Frank G, since the new coaches have been on the staff, what recruiting offer interests you the most at their respective position groups?
Well, the only one that really stands out to me as far as the new coaches would probably, there's a few at linebacker, but the big one is the David Fuller-Runshoe kid from Chicago. That's an offer that's happened since Charlie Partridge was hired. I don't know what took them so long to discover that kid, but that's an intriguing one. Secondary wise, probably John Gay would probably be the one. He's got some intriguing film. A lot of the other kids, like they've offered some kids who are committed somewhere else. They offered a kid who's committed, I think, Texas today. Not flipping a kid from Texas. Linebacker has been more. They've offered a couple new kids. They offered a kid yesterday, a linebacker that I haven't had a chance to dive into. That's committed somewhere else. But the big one is like they're in it with Noah Glover more so than they were before because he had a great relationship with Brian Jean-Marie. So I think that's more an intriguing one. Linebacker, we haven't seen as much movement with offers as we have. It's a little bit more in flux right now than the other two positions are. But the other thing for Aaron Henry is a lot of the new offers from Aaron Henry have been 28 kids. Remember, Notre Dame has 3 commitments already in secondary when he showed up. They really only need 1 or 2 more commits total where I think the biggest thing for Brian Jean-Marie right now is making sure Amari Irvin is good to go. The biggest priority for Aaron Henry is making sure that your relationship with Xavier Hassan, Ace Austin, and Khalil Terry is good to go. I think those are going to be the most important things for them. And then you can go next. But I think the Fuller Runshoe one is, and that's my best guess at how to say that, is by far the most intriguing because you're like, dude, you just offered a kid from Chicago who is that good. Wish you'd have been on him a couple months ago.
Yeah.
But they're still in a great place. I mean, I think most people view them as the leader right now. You just got to keep that going. Got to keep it going.
From Tommy Toughnuts, on balance, how was the strategy of recruiting former NFL players' sons worked out? Obviously, most are still young, no pun intended. But are they on track or better or worse at this point?
I mean, I think it's gone very well. You think one of those guys is Joe Alt. I mean, he was the son of a former NFL player. He worked out pretty good. They weren't football players, but obviously Torrey Hunter Jr. was pretty good at Notre Dame. Corey Robinson was pretty good at Notre Dame. The new group obviously is young. Elijah Burris, they're very high on. Bryce Young's been a 2-year player for Notre Dame. He's done some very good things. Second on the team in pressures this past year. I think we both view him as a potential breakout player. I think that's gone pretty well. Who are some of the other NFL guys a lot of them are freshmen, sophomores. Elijah Burris is a younger guy.
As far as a retention conversation, it's been great outside of Kennedy or Locker. Right. I mean, outside of that, they're all still in. Yeah, absolutely.
I still wish he would have stayed.
Me too.
I do. I liked Kennedy. Just even if it's just to watch him run down on kickoff and punt coverage, it would have been nice to see.
Then from Tommy, if you were advising Pete Bavacqua on how to improve the non-football sports programs without decreasing the football commitment, what would you advise?
You've just got to commit more resources to the rosters. You've got to find more donors to give money to get the players. Like, that's the big thing. You've got to throw a few extra million in there for the basketball programs to get players. You've got to be more supportive of them to be able to retain players and get higher level players in the portal. That's going to be the big key. You can't win with just high school recruiting in women's basketball, in my opinion. High school recruiting is still priority number 1, but you have to be willing to have an impact in the portal, whether it's getting a player again, I'm not talking about bringing in 5, man or 5 girl classes in the portal. I'm talking about like, hey, you got great guards. You need to go out and spend money to get that one big that could be the difference between your success. Last year, they needed one more like true big, like that's what they were missing. And for 2 years, they kept trying to have Maddie Westbeld be a post when she should be more of a stretch 4, and just they never could do that. And part of it's because they kept losing those battles because they weren't able to pay the money to get those big time prospects, like the 6'8" girl that TCU had that they just couldn't handle when they lost last year. And then who else played in that game? Haley Van Lith, another portal pickup. So I think it's just money, and make sure you've got the right coach and have a sense of accountability. Like, hey, coach, what's going on? Why what we got to do better here? biggest thing for Micah Shrewsbury is if you're going to keep him as your head coach, you need to make sure that he has the resources he needs to keep all the kids that they just signed in the high school class here. Keep Jalen Harrelson, keep Sir Muhammad, keep Ryder Frost, keep Cole Serta, keep all those guys at Notre Dame. But then you've got to be able to get a little bit of a higher level. I mean, look what Michigan's done. I mean, Michigan's basketball team this year is unreal. And it's almost all portal guys. There's really only 3 guys in the rotation, and they all come off the bench that were high school recruits for Michigan. You got Trey McKinney, who's a true freshman. You got LJ Kaysen, who is a sophomore, and then Will Cheddar. Now, they just got beat by Duke, who a lot of their success is high school kids. But they're getting what kind of high school kids? They're getting the elite top 10 players. So there's 2 very clear ways to have elite teams. And Duke and Michigan are both elite. One is primarily high school. One is primarily portal. Both ways cost a lot of money. Notre Dame wants to be the high school route? Fine. Then you need to do what you need to do to allow Micah Shrewsbury to go out there and get more of those top 100, top 50 players. You're not going to bid Duke and Kentucky for top 5 players. You're just not. Nor do I think you necessarily should, unless there's the occasional Jalen Harrelson who's just a unique young man that wants to embrace what Notre Dame is all about. But get more top 50 guys, more top 75 guys, and then make sure that you have the money to keep them, and then do a better job of getting the pieces around them. For the women's game, it's just about retention and the occasional, 1 or 2 portal pickups a year. Women's team can afford to get 5 stars in high school. In high school, it's cheaper, and Notre Dame has a very different reputation in basketball and women's basketball than men's basketball. They are Duke, they are Kentucky, they are Kansas in women's basketball. It really is that to me, Trev. It's money. Make sure that they can afford. If you need to go get an elite recruiter as an assistant coach. If I need a support staff that needs more people, like it's all about money. They just built that brand new facility that's awesome. It's really just about money for roster and money for coaching staffs. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, I mean, simply put, I can't speak as much on the women's program like you can. I mean, for the men's team, you got to sit down and have a truthful evaluation about your roster and what you can't afford to lose. Jalen Harrelson has to be back in South Bend. Brady Kaler has to be back in South Bend. Cole Serta. I mean, you have a 7-footer finally coming in the 2020, I guess, 7 recruiting class. That's going to be huge for them this upcoming season. But look, I'm at 26 recruiting class. But the biggest thing, the toughest part with the portal, especially for like basketball, is like point guards and centers in college basketball are kind of like wide receivers and defensive tackles in the football transfer portal. Like point guards, obviously, it's a little bit more kind of like call it the more diva-esque positions, kind of like how wide receivers are in college football. And then for centers, they know their value. So their asking price is that of a defensive tackle in college football, like a premier defensive tackle in college football. The biggest issue right now for Notre Dame is Marcus Burton's out with an injury. And so you're asking your 6'7" stretch 3 to be your primary ball handler as a true freshman.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part with them right now. And so you need to go get more top level players. But the reality is at Notre Dame, especially for men's basketball, you're not bringing in a one and done from high school. It doesn't fit the Notre Dame mold. It doesn't fit what those recruits would be coming to South Bend for. So the model has to look differently, but all encompassing, you need more financial resources.
And you've got to do a better job too as a coach of building your roster. They should have brought in a younger player that could run the point. I mean, look, Michigan went out and bought the North Carolina point guard, and he's having a nice season, but they have LJ Kaysen coming off the bench. Like, they have legit play. If you look at who was it they beat, was it Purdue? I think it was when LJ Kaysen came off the bench and went off. But that's a Micah Shrewsbury problem. Now, you could say he couldn't recruit one because they couldn't afford one. That's fine, but you got to get somebody, even if it's just a solid, in-state kid that can handle the ball and distribute it. Like, you got to do something other than trying to go get Mark Zachary off the football team. Like, that's a roster construction problem. But again, constructing a roster in today's game it's not free. And so yeah, make sure the resources are there. Then if Coach Shrewsbury can't put the roster together appropriately, then you go find someone who can. I think that's the big thing for me.
Complete sidebar from college basketball, but did you see what D'Angelo Pond's vertical was?
Yes, freaking 43.5 inches.
Fourth best
That's
in NFL combine history.
second best
At
this
that,
year.
like, dude.
This is Sonny Styles, who's just an absolute freak. Yeah, that's how you thrive playing cornerback at 5'8.5", because that's what he weighed in at.
Good.
You have longish arms for your size, and you can you can run real fast and jump really high. So is he going to run? Have you seen if he's going to run or not?
No, I'm not sure. I haven't seen.
I hope he does, because I'm curious to see what his 40 is.
As am I.
Yeah. All right, Trev, let's get to some more questions here. We've got one here from Salty that I thought was a good question. Here we go.
Which newly hired head coach will have more success this season, Matt Campbell at Penn State or Eric Morris at Oklahoma State?
That is a great question. I lean towards Matt Campbell because I think the foundation is stronger. He's bringing players from from Iowa State to Penn State, whereas Eric Morris is bringing guys from North Texas to Oklahoma State. I do think that Eric Morris can have some success there, Trev. I'm just not completely on board with the Eric Morris is going to do a great job train yet, because he has really only had like the one good year. He had to build North Texas. So, it's just a different situation for me. But if he's a good head coach, I think they've got a shot to be a surprisingly improved team. I mean, the bar is way lower for them. I mean, they were terrible last year. Terrible. If they win 6 games this year, like, that's an improvement, like a giant improvement. Where if Penn State loses 6 games again this year, or wins 6 games again this year, they're like, oh, this is a bad, this is bad. This is not good. But I lean towards Matt Campbell having more success.
Yeah, greatest improvement I think will be Eric Morris, but the more successful season, I think it'll be Matt Campbell at Penn State. Yeah, I'm with you.
All right, here's we have another taco question here, Trev.
Authentic tacos with a Mexican Coke or a juicy burger with fries?
I would easily go with the juicy burger with fries. I had authentic tacos when we were in Cabo, I think is what it was, a few years ago. I did not know that a Mexican taco was different than I now know that there's American tacos. I was like, where's the cheese? And then it was very different. I was, yeah.
It depends on the mood that I'm in, Aaron, to be honest with you. Like, I have grown significantly fonder of corn tortilla shells than I have before. That was one of the biggest shocks with me, was going from flour tortillas to corn tortilla shells. But it honestly depends on the mood that I'm in, to be completely honest with you. So I don't think you can go wrong with either.
Yeah. I just also, with both of these, it depends on who you're getting it from. You know what I mean? But a juicy burger is still better for me. Still better for me. I'd like American tacos. I just am more of the American taco guy. I want the tortilla. I want a corn tortilla. I want ground beef. I want lettuce. I want cheddar cheese, shredded cheddar cheese. That's what I want on a taco. So that's where I'm at.
Super chat from Roll Irish. Appreciate you. Do you know what the new building being built by the practice facility is going to be? And do you think adding campus improvements help recruiting?
I don't know when that's going to be. We should probably find out here soon. Those things absolutely help with recruiting, yes. When you've got state-of-the-art facilities, that's going to absolutely help you with recruiting. No question. No question. It's not the end-all, be-all, but when that gets eliminated as a potential issue, that helps you. Even if it's just, well, we can't use it against Notre Dame anymore. Even if it's not like, oh my God, their facilities are better than anybody else. If it's just like, look, they may not be as nice as here, but they're close, and so it's not going to be a factor in my decision. That helps recruiting. Just that alone, in my opinion. helps.
Yeah, absolutely. It's staying up to date. I mean, you see pictures of other teams' weight rooms and things like that, like Oregon's weight room, Alabama's weight room, state-of-the-art facilities. That definitely helps with recruiting for sure.
Yep.
Because I mean, as much as we as fans love the old school, like Notre Dame feel and the tradition there, I don't know if a 16-year-old is going to view that the same. I mean, I can only imagine recruits back in the day taking visits to Alabama that has, jumbotrons and turf fields and all that. They go to Notre Dame and it's grass. There's no jumbotron. All the seats are wooden with splinters in them. It's like, okay, it's
Right.
just different. So, yeah.
Part of the reason that I like what Notre Dame has done to Notre Dame Stadium is they've modernized it without losing the old school stadium feel.
Yes.
That was a big concern of mine. Now, do I like the outside look as much as I did before? No, because it just doesn't have the nostalgic look. But you kind of had to do that in order to get the job done, period, right? I mean, that just was a necessary evil. But I care more about what a stadium looks like on the inside, not what it looks like in the 2 minutes walking up to the stadium. You know what I mean? Like, it still looks cool on the outside if you never saw what the stadium looked like before. You'd have no issue with the outside now. But because I'd seen the old stadium and, the historic but the inside, I thought they mastered, and I was nervous about this. They mastered modern aspects, scoreboard, the strip, the press boxes, the fireworks. They have mastered keeping it still looks like Notre Dame Stadium, but it's modernized perfectly. Now, do I have some disagreements with what they put on the scoreboard during games? Sure, but that's a nitpick. That can be corrected like that. If you don't do it right in the construction and you lose that whole feel, then it sucks. But, it's still pretty awesome on the inside. It still looks like Notre Dame Stadium, in my opinion, on the outside. It's just a modernized version of it, and I think they nailed it. I really do. And I was not against upgrades. I was not necessarily against a scoreboard. I had said in the past, I think Newt Rockne would have absolutely been one of the first people to have a scoreboard if they were around at that time. He was an innovative type of guy. It's more about what do you do with the scoreboard that was always my question. So I thought they handled it perfectly, Trev. I really do. They really did. It really did. Here's one, Trev, from number one ND fan. I'll have you answer this one. He says that picture of Brian Kelly just freaking kills me every time.
Dude, I'm not going to lie. When I saw it come through, I thought it was a baby.
Same thing. Same difference. What is the next big renovation you expect Notre Dame Stadium to have?
Ooh. I mean,
it's a good one.
The only thing that I could think would be just adding more seats. Because I don't know. There are some stadiums where there's a fear of if you add more seating, then you might not be able to sell out games. I don't think Notre Dame will ever come across that problem. I really don't. Now, when I mean add more seats, I don't mean make it a 100,000 seat stadium.
That's just not going to be possible with where their stadium is located.
Agreed. Now, do I think that they could make it slightly bigger to add 10 to 15,000 more? I do. So I could see that being the next big renovation, because outside of that, like, it's some of it for me is just process of elimination. I don't know what else that they could add anymore. I mean, maybe enough people complain, so they make the visitors tunnel wider than being able to come out single file, but I doubt it.
Keep doing it the way you're doing it, baby.
That's probably it. That or more updates to like the locker room on game day, making that slightly more modern.
I think those are the things that you'd see different, Trev. It's some of the amenities, maybe they update the restrooms in the stadium. You know what I mean? Like maybe they upgrade. Here's an area that I think you could maybe see an upgrade is the concession areas. I think could use a makeover. Like that's still a little dank and, having walked through it, maybe that's an area you could see a bit of a makeover. I kind of think they have found a sweet spot. Would I like a few thousand more seats? Yeah. I like the notion of it being a little bit smaller. I mean, it's still 25 or actually 16 or 17,000 bigger than what it was in 1993 before all the upgrades. And it used to be a 59,000 seat stadium. I kind of like the smaller field. I just wish they didn't, price certain people out of it. I think, honestly, I don't know that a renovation would be necessarily a thing, but if this would count, but I still think that I would love to see them modernize the end zones. With all due respect to the what's the word I'm looking for here, Trev? The slashes, right? That hasn't always been on the stadium at Notre Dame. That's not a thing that has always ever been there. I would like to see a colored end zone. I get not having it when you have a grass field, but when you got a turf field, it's time to modernize the end zone. I think putting Indy at midfield, some people didn't like because it used to just be a plain green field. I think it's awesome. But big interlocking Indy at midfield is awesome. I would love to see a blue and gold end zone with Fighting Irish on one side, or Fighting Irish or Notre Dame or whatever. I would love to see that. I think that would be the one thing that would make the stadium pop even more than it does, because I think it's a pretty sweet stadium. I really do. Do I kind of miss when guys would score touchdowns and fans were right there because they were open and,
Yeah.
kind of, but in today's era, I just don't know how safe that is, but that's my big thing is I would, and I would assume I'm in the minority on this, but I would love to see colored end zones. I think that would be awesome. What are your thoughts on that, Trev? On
Colored end
the
zones?
question, but then also both. You're because you said the big renovation you talked about, but like the colored end zones, what are your thoughts on that? Pro, against, indifferent?
It's mostly indifferent, because I like seeing it when it's in the playoffs, but sometimes it's like, sometimes it feels a little special. You know what I mean? Kind of like the names on the back of the jerseys. Like, I know it's the postseason because there's a colored end zone that says Notre Dame in it. It's kind of like that. But if they did it for regular season games, I wouldn't be in the crowd that'd be like, this is awesome and this is the best thing. But I certainly wouldn't be in the crowd of like, this is ridiculous. It's like, well, I don't think it's that either. So, yeah.
I think it'd be cool. Awesome. I really do. The question would be, what color do you make it? There's the blue, but then the other one is the reverse the colors and, and have it be gold with blue and white letters. I'd be curious to kind of see which one I would like best, but I just think colored end zones, the blue with the gold letters and white outline, or white letters with gold outline, either one I think would look sweet.
Hopefully the biggest renovation we'll see in 2026 and they stop playing the Venga Bus Six Flags theme song after the defense gets a stop on third down. Ideally, that would be a fantastic renovation to the stadium, if I'm being honest.
The music and the DJ and the girl that does the interviews in games could all be upgraded and improved upon. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. Here's a good question from, I want to get to some people we haven't had a lot of today. Here's a good one from Justin Sniper.
What 12 teams would you predict will be in the playoffs this season?
So obviously it's a little early. I haven't necessarily gone through and done all my predictions, so I'm just going to do sort of an off the top of my head one. I think Notre Dame makes it from independent. I think Miami is the ACC rep. I'm kind of oddly high on Clemson this year, Trev. Like, I just am. I'm oddly high on them. We talked about their portal class and some of their pickups, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to put them in the playoff just yet. In the Big Ten, I have Oregon from the Big Ten. I have Indiana from the Big Ten, and I have Ohio State from the Big Ten. So I have the same Big Ten teams as last year as of right now. Curious what Michigan's going to do. I think there's a couple other teams that maybe could be in the conversation. From the Big 12, I think we're going to see Texas Tech again be the lone representative from the Big 12. So that's 6. You're going to have the G5 team, and then you get to the SEC. Look, I'm going to predict Georgia misses the playoffs after they finally miss the playoffs. I'm just not going to bet against Kirby making the playoffs. I'm just not going to do it. Texas is another team that I'm very high on as being a playoff team this year. I think that they're absolutely going to be in the conversation. So that gives me 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That gives me 9. So who else are we going to see here in the playoffs? So you look at the SEC right now. I'd probably bank on A&M would be another one of mine. That gets me to 10, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Probably get a fourth SEC team. Oklahoma. That's right. I had them as a top 10 team this year. I actually think Oklahoma is going to be better this year than they were last year. So that's my fourth SEC team. And then it comes down to, in my opinion, a second ACC. So the last spot is going to be either Clemson, LSU, which is interesting because they play in the opener, BYU, or a kind of a sleeper Big 12 team, or a Big 10 team. And if I were to guess right now, if I were to predict right now which Big 10 team has the best shot of being the fourth Big 10 team, I'd actually go Michigan. Like, I think their schedule sets up well for it. They get Oklahoma at home. I think they get Ohio State at home. Didn't they play in Columbus this year? Right? Wasn't the game at Columbus this year? Am I wrong on that? Am I completely
wait.
wrong? Where was the game this year? I'm gonna look it up real quick.
No, they played at Michigan.
Michigan? Okay.
Yes.
So it was at Michigan. So that'll be a little bit tougher, but they get Oklahoma at home. I think Michigan could surprise some people. I'm not ready to bet on it yet. So I'm not quite sure who my 12th team is going to be yet, Trev. I'm not. But just kind of off the top of my head, that's probably where I'm going to go. I really think we could see a second ACC team this year. I do. I think SMU is going to have a shot. I think Clemson is going to surprise some people this year. Could surprise some people this year. Yeah. And who knows? Florida State just may come out of nowhere. You have no idea what they're going to do. None. But and then I could also see a second Big 12 team. But I think the Big 12 is going to have the same problem it does every year. There's just too much parity after Texas Tech, and they just kind of beat each other up. I think the same thing's going to happen next year. And there's an outside chance we see a fifth SEC team. Trev, I do think there's a chance at that. And if I'll say this, worst case scenario for if you're someone who wants automatic bids, the worst thing that could happen to you is this is a bounce back year for the SEC and they get 5 teams in. Because then it's like, what's the incentive for the SEC to ever do auto bids when they're getting 5 in just naturally now? So I'm kind of actually rooting for it because I don't want them to get to the bullcrap auto bids in the 2014 playoff. I think that's just stupid. So that's kind of where I'm at, Trev. I don't know who my 12th team is, but just kind of for fun, February, haven't really thought through it too much. That would be my 12. My 11 plus the candidates for it.
Yeah, off the top of my head, we have the same Big 10 teams. I have Oregon, IU, Ohio State. Obviously, Notre Dame in there as the independent. I have Tulane as the group of 5. I have Miami as my ACC rep. Out of the Big 12, I have BYU and Texas Tech. And then out of the SEC, I have Texas, Texas A&M, Georgia, and LSU.
Yeah. My issue with BYU is the receiver loss. I think that's going to hurt a lot worse than losing Jake Retzlaff from last year.
Sure.
I think that could sting if they end up losing him. And I think he's done no matter what. I mean, to what he's admitted happened, he's going to be suspended probably.
Yeah.
If what actually happened is all that if what he said happened is all that happened and he's telling the absolute 100% truth, he's still toast for this season. So it's going to be interesting. Very, very interesting. Somebody asked what if Notre Dame beats Miami, what path do they have to the playoff? They win the ACC. If they win the ACC, they're in. Like that's just like the rule. Just so we're clear, and I talked about this yesterday on the debate thing I did. The new rule, the only change to the playoff is not Notre Dame gets in at the top 12. That's not the only change. The other change is all 4 Power 4 teams, their conference champ is now getting an automatic bid, no matter what. So if the rule went into play last year, Notre Dame would have been in and Duke would have been in automatically. 8-5, unranked, still in because they're the Power 4 champ. So you can miss me with the whole, if Notre Dame's one of the top 12, they're guaranteed a top 12 spot. The horror when you could have an unranked team win your league because of these imbalanced schedules and still be in the playoffs. So I think Miami is going to be really good this year. I do. And I think they win the ACC. I think they're the best team in the ACC. That's the path for them.
Yeah.
Yep. So Toriano Pride just ran a 4.32. Kid from Missouri that Notre Dame he transferred from Clemson. Yeah, that's really cooking. He's not a great cover guy, but he can at least run fast. That's a good question. Real quick on this one, Aaron Valerio, are y'all thinking about heading to Provo on October 17th? I've already bought my plane ticket. So yeah, I've already bought mine. Unfortunately, Trevor's probably going to have to be stuck at home doing the post-game show. So sorry about that. But yeah,
it's quite all right.
And we got that one. Here's a good one. I wanted to get to this one.
In honor of USC penning San Jose State as Notre Dame's replacement, can we get a full-bore rant from BD about USC and take down each lie USC people use one by one? Happy Friday.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to kind of share with me what those lies are because I tend to ignore most USC people. The biggest one is the whole notion that Notre Dame dropped USC.
Yeah.
It was, first of all, it was a mutual parting. Notre Dame ultimately is the one that said, we're not going to do that. You can't lie about that. But the spin, the lie, the gaslighting, whatever phrase you want to use coming from USC people is like, we made an honest offer to Notre Dame and they just wouldn't take it. That's an absolute lie. That's a lie from the pits of hell, which is also known as Los Angeles. So, it's an absolute lie because they made offers to Notre Dame that they knew they weren't going to accept. It's like, if I say, hey, Trev, listen, man, I'm going to renegotiate your salary. And he's like, sweet. Yeah, you can do the same job you have. Matter of fact, Trev, I'm going to give you more responsibility at Irish Breakdown. I'm going to make you vice president of Irish Breakdown. What's the catch? Well, I'm only going to pay you $10,000 a year. Well, no, I'm good. I want to keep my current term. No, you misunderstood, Trev. Your current contract is gone. It expired. Yes, it expires next week. This is the new terms. You're going to be VP of Irish Breakdown. More responsibility, Trev. You get to do more. We're proud of you. We think you're doing a great job. But I'm only going to pay $10,000. Are you going to keep this job, Trev? Heck to the no. You're not. I'll say for you. You're not going to keep this job. Even if you wanted to, your wife's going to be like, no. You're not going to keep a job where you're working as much as you're working, making $10,000 a year, right? So I made you an offer. So then what do? Well, hey, look, guys, I made Trevor a great offer. He could be VP of Irish Breakdown. He'd have more responsibility. I was going to fly him to every game. Like, I made him a great offer. And he said no. I leave out the part where I completely just got rid of most of your salary and gave you enough to maybe pay your mortgage for 3 months. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I leave that part out and to make it seem like, well, I wanted Trevor back, but, he wouldn't agree to the new terms. That would make me what, Trevor? A liar. Like, it would make me a liar. It'd be pure spin. Of course you say no to that because you're never going to agree to terms like that. It's the same thing that happened here. It's the same exact thing that happened here. USC knew what Notre Dame would and wouldn't do. And John Christopher said, a jerk. Facts. I mean, it would absolutely make me a jerk. That's also true. I'd be a lying jerk. But that's what USC did here, Trev. They made Notre Dame an offer that they knew Notre Dame was not going to accept because it's a stupid offer. And it's also one that you can't even guarantee the NCAA will honor by letting you play in week 0 every year. They don't allow that to happen. USC's been talking about getting out of this rivalry since Lincoln Riley showed up. They wanted out, and they made sure that the terms they offered Notre Dame were such that they knew Notre Dame would not give into that. And that's why the series is over. So did Notre Dame choose it? To a degree, yeah. But that's because Notre Dame refused to accept the new terms that USC was trying to put into this rivalry. If they would have just kept what they were doing or moved it to the end of the year, guess what? This rivalry's still going on, and Notre Dame would be very happy about it. So the idea that somehow this is Notre Dame's fault is either said from a place of ignorance, like you just don't know what happened, or you're just flat out a liar. Because spin is lying. That's why I get mad whenever somebody says you're spinning something. If somebody ever says, you're being disingenuous, like I take offense to that because all of those terms include that I'm being dishonest. And I don't like that. I get very upset about that because one thing I don't do is just flat out lie. I mean, if there's some things like somebody says, hey, you can't talk about this and I can't talk about it. But like, I'm not going to tell you something that's flat out not true. And so these people that are saying things that are spin, it's lying. You're lying. You're running cover for your team. And as Brian Kelly will attest to, I don't do that. You know what I mean? As Joe Rudolph and Brian Van Gorder would attest to, I don't do that. And you've got some USC people that aren't doing that. There's some USC reporters that are flat out calling out the bull crap. And hats off to them. But then you have the others that are running cover for the team. There's some USC fans who are not giving it, who are not buying the bull crap. Let's be honest. There's probably more USC fans that are calling USC out for their bull crap than there would be Notre Dame fans if the roles were reversed. Let's be honest about that. And I give USC some of the reporters and some of the fans and some of the alums a lot of credit because they are calling USC out on, no, you're lying. This is on you. So that's the biggest thing. Keyshawn Johnson, Petros Papadakis, Scott Wolf. There's been a lot of people that cover the team that have been willing to say this is bullcrap. This is absolute bullcrap. So that's where I'm at on that one, Trev. It's just the whole thing is just a flat out lie. They are trying to schedule their non-conference in a way that makes it easier for them to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that. And he's been talking about for years. That's why they canceled the Ole Miss series. They were supposed to play Ole Miss this year. They got out of it. They were going to play them in 25 and 26, I believe. And they got out of that series. Now, I think Ole Miss wanted out too. They tried to get out of the LSU series. Remember that? They tried to get out of the 24 LSU game that they freaking won. But they wanted out of it because they wanted an easier game. Now, fortunately for them, they won the game. Still went 6-6 because Lincoln Riley's soft. But, they've been trying to duck big games forever. I mean, look, guys, there's a reason that Notre Dame, the minute after the game was announced, scheduled BYU, and why it took USC almost 2 months to announce San Jose State as their new opponent. Come on. They knew that they weren't going to play anybody good. They just knew they couldn't announce San Jose State when Notre Dame announced BYU. That's the difference. So they had to kind of let it die down and get into this period where it's not going to be talked about as much. So that's where I'm at.
I think that's totally fair.
They're lying. People saying that this isn't a Notre Dame thing are lying to you. They're gaslighting you, all that kind of stuff. My favorite are the clowns that say Notre Dame is ducking USC. Like, yes, they're ducking a team that they've dominated for the last decade. Sure. My other favorite one is they see what USC's building. Okay, sure. That's why Notre Dame just scheduled a 12-year deal with Clemson. That's why Notre Dame just scheduled Auburn. That's why Notre Dame has scheduled Alabama, Texas in the next few years because they're scared of what USC is building. Okay. You keep telling yourself that there, Chief. The lies people tell themselves about their favorite teams is absolutely hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
Well, I don't know what anybody else got out of that entire conversation, but I got one thing, baby. My new job title.
VP and IB.
So we could talk money afterwards, BD. But I heard about my new job title, so we're going out to dinner tonight to celebrate.
Well, you forgot that it came with a giant pay cut. That's awesome. For those watching on the podcast that aren't watching the video, Trevor just held up a sign that said VP at Irish Breakdown at IB. He put it on his chest. That is great. I knew that's where you're going to go. I don't know what you guys got out of that, but I got it. I'm the VP.
So I want people to start putting some respect on my name. I'm the vice president, baby. That's what I'm hearing.
You misunderstood. You're the assistant to the vice president. Okay, Dwight? So you're the assistant to the regional manager, Trevor. Oh, my goodness. And somebody said the other side keeps saying Notre Dame is irrelevant. Anyone who keeps saying another team is irrelevant is basically telling on themselves.
Yeah.
Because you have to care about a team to be irrelevant. So, yeah, that was awesome. last couple ones.
From our guy, Tom Redinger. How many teams this year will have a legitimate chance to win the championship? I'm at 5. Notre Dame, Oregon, Texas, Ohio State, Miami. Last year was like 10, in my opinion. Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, IU. Too many issues.
Trev, I think, what did we say preseason? Like 8 or 9?
Yeah.
I think we said there was like 8 or 9 teams that are capable of winning it. I absolutely still have Indiana in my list. So I agree with your 5. I agree with all 5 of those. I would also add Georgia into that conversation, although there's a big gap between them. I would add Indiana into that conversation as well. You can't discount Indiana, like, to me. Like, I know that everybody's like kind of like waiting on the drop off and all that other kind of stuff, but I'm not ready for that one yet. I'm just not. I just don't see that one.
Yeah, Tom, I definitely agree with your 5. I'll say this. I still think there's about 8 to 9 teams that have a legitimate chance to win. That being said, I do think that there's 3 that I think are separated above the rest, and I think that's Notre Dame, Texas, and Oregon. I think those 3 have the best of that 8 to 9. But again, would it shock me if Ohio State did it? Nope. IU? Nope. I mean, I talk about the roster.
Team I have on there, Trev, that is I'm telling you, this team has a chance. They need some things to go right, but has a chance to really surprise some people and maybe go on a run. Is Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I really like. I didn't like last year's Oklahoma team for a lot of reasons. I like this team a lot better. I do. I think we said this, Trev. My top 8 teams, I said there's a big gap between my top 8 and then what comes afterwards.
Yeah.
And my top 8 were, and I think you and I both had the same top 8, I believe, for the most
part. We had the
part,
same top 7, LSU. I believe.
Yeah. Because you had LSU in there in there as well. I had Indiana, Notre Dame, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, and Oklahoma. And I said I think there's a big drop off between them and the next teams. And I think those 8 teams are the ones that I think have a shot to win a championship. I think LSU could end up being a lot better. I just can't put them in the winning the championship mode yet because I think they have a shot to get into the playoffs. I don't see Lane Kiffin leading a team to 3-4 wins in the playoffs in year 1. I just don't think he's that kind of coach, and I just don't know that the roster is going to be quite that good. It's good enough to get into the playoffs. I don't know if it's good enough to go on a run.
Sure.
Those other 8 teams, I think, are capable of it. And I think people are discounting Indiana. People are making a little bit of an early prediction on Indiana dropping off, and I would not assume that, folks. I'm just telling you that right now. I would not assume that. Would not assume that at all.
From Bobby S., who are your top 5 Notre Dame players this year to make the Freaks list?
Well, you got to go with Bryce Young. I mean, he has to be on there because he was on it last year. You have to go with Francis Brew because he was on it each of the last 2 years. Now, knowing how things go with Notre Dame, he will have been in it 2 years at Pitt, but now he won't be on it. I think those are 2 that could certainly be on it. I could see Leonard Moore being on it this year. I could see Tay Johnson being on it this year. I could see one of the linebackers jumping into the conversation this year. I could see, maybe like an Anthony Knapp for his power numbers and different, some of his agility numbers are usually pretty good. And then it wouldn't shock me if a receiver made it, either Cam Williams or Quincy Porter, Mylan Graham, maybe one of those guys could potentially be in it. Those would probably be my best bets for the Freaks list this year. I think a lot of them are going to be on defense, though.
Yeah, I think so too. Like Tion Gray could be a dark horse. He's starting to gain some momentum of being like Notre Dame's best portal pickup. So I mean, I think once people see that he's 6'6", 300 and some odd pounds, and body type that Notre Dame hasn't had in the interior. So I could see him potentially making that.
Yeah, in a while, for sure. All right, let's get to last 2 here. Here's this one from Jay Melvin, and then we'll get to one more, and then we'll wrap her up.
Right on. Brian, who do you like more, Peyton Houston or Elijah Haven, 2 Louisiana quarterbacks?
I'm a big Peyton Houston fan. I think Elijah Haven probably has more of the NFL upside just because Peyton Houston's 5'10". But, man, I think Peyton Houston is a stud. I've said that for a long time. I think he's a stud. So I like Houston more. They're both very talented quarterbacks. Louisiana is starting to produce more quarterbacks, Trev. I've noticed that in recent years as well. And then this is the last one from Gideon Rosa.
Ooh, Mylan Graham versus Jaden Greathouse. Who is more talented?
Well, it depends on what you define as talent. Some people will define talent as just athleticism. And if we're just talking athleticism, I'd probably give the advantage to Mylan Graham. He's faster. He's probably jumps higher. He probably has better testing numbers. I would imagine if they did like a combine drill today, I'd imagine Mylan Graham would probably test better than Jaden Greathouse in most areas. If you include the skills that go into playing receiver, then I think the argument's a little bit tougher to make. Jaden Greathouse has as good a ball skills as anybody in the country. I mean, legitimately, not just my opinion in the highlight reels, but the numbers. He had an 80-something% contested catch win rate in 2024. I'm actually going to pull this up here real quick, Trev, because I remember I did a breakdown on this and I compared his contested catch rate. Like Malachi Fields this year was like right at 50%. And I did a breakdown of the 2024 numbers. And I'm going to see if I can find it real quick on our board. It's another reason to be a member here, but I'm going to try to see if I can find that breakdown that we did, where I did sort of looking at the contested catch rate in 2024. Here it is. Jaden Greathouse's contested catch rate was 84.6% in 2024. Emeka Egbuka was 59.1. Jalen Noel, who was a third-round pick, was 52.0. Luther Burden in 2023, when he had his great year, was 56.5. Antonio Williams from Clemson was at 57.9. Jeremy Bernard was 50%. Kevin Concepcion in 23 was 35.7%. Eric Singleton in 2024 was 24%, or excuse me, 44%. Caden Lee from Ole Miss had an 11.1%. Zechariah Branch was 20%. The only guy that was even close was DeAndre Moore from Texas, who had a 63.6% compared to Jaden Greathouse, who had an 84.6% rate. Who are the top receivers in this year? You got Cardinal Tate, right? So let's go look at Cardinal Tate real quick and see what his contested catch rate was this season. Cardinal Tate this year's contested catch rate was 85.6%. Very good. Right there with Jaden Greathouse, who's 84. What did I say? 84.6. Jeremiah Smith, 55%. Let's go to USC and let's go to, I always still on PFF, still click on Pac-12 for USC. And then I'm like, oh, shoot, I got to go back to it. His contested catch rate, Mekhi Lemon, the Biletnikoff winner, was 10 of 15, 66.7%. Jaden Greathouse was 11 out of 13. 84.6%. To just give you an idea of how good he was at winning contested catches. That's a big part of talent, is being able to catch the ball. I think he's got better hands than Mylan Graham. So I think it's very similar. I think Jaden Greathouse wins some of the receiver talent things. Mylan Graham would win some of the just pure athleticism things. They're both very talented. So I just think it depends on who you ask. If you look at someone who believes talent is about how fast you run, how high you jump, and how quick you move, they'd probably go Mylan Graham. If you're someone like me who factors in actual receiver talent, body control, hands, tracking the ball well, things like that, I'd probably slightly go Jaden Greathouse. But Mylan Graham is very talented. Very talented. That's my case, Trev. You want to go a different way? Thoughts on that?
No, we view it the same. I think with these two players, you have to separate it into who's the most athletic versus who's the best football player right now. And right now, the best football player is Jaden Greathouse. We've seen what he can do in that capacity, whereas Mylan Graham is a freak athlete. But I think there's a difference between the two. But the benefit is Notre Dame is going to need both.
They're very different style of players too.
Yes.
You're not going to ask Mylan Graham to do some of the things that you're going to ask Jaden Greathouse to do, and you're not going to ask Jaden Greathouse to do some of the things you're going to ask Mylan Graham to do. You're not going to ask Jaden Greathouse to line up at Z or X and run a post route where he gets over top of the defense. That's not his game. You might ask Mylan Graham to do that. You're going to ask him to do different things. Jaden Greathouse is going to be your third down monster. I don't know that that's where you're going to have Mylan Graham make his living. He's the 1st and 10, let's throw him a now screen guy. Jaden Greathouse can do that, but if you're going to ask me who do I want to get a screen to, Jaden Greathouse or or Mylan Graham, I say, well, what's the down and distance? If it's 3rd and 5, I'm not throwing anybody other than Jane Greathouse. If it's 1st and 10, give me Mylan Graham because he may house it. So KQ just said, sweet, sounds like they'll complement each other very nicely. You heard us correctly. Great takeaway from that, Kay, because that's exactly what we're saying. They're complementary skill players. And that's important because we talked about this a couple years ago. Like their roster was just filled with a bunch of slot guys and Bo Collins. This year is a bunch of slot guys and Malachi Fields. Next year, because you got Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter, you've now added a few more outside receiver types to your roster. And I think that was very, very important. Got a super sticker from Black Irish 864. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you, man. He said, just because super sticker. I appreciate you very, very much. Well, Mr. Trowbridge, that's going to do it for today's show, man. There's a few that we didn't get to, but I think we covered a lot of those same topics either earlier or we'll get to some more next week. But that was a lot of fun. Yeah. A lot of fun. Great question. Trevor and I were talking about this before the show. You guys have been really bringing it this offseason on Friday mailbags. Like a lot of great questions, a lot of great discussion in the chat. We really appreciate what y'all are doing in the show these last couple weeks. So
yes,
really, really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Now, make sure you tune in here a little bit over a half an hour to IB Nation Sports Beat. They have We In, We Out. Kicks off at 5:05 p.m. tonight. IB Nation Sports Beat. Not going to want to miss that one. On your way out of here, please be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. Anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Brian and I will be back on Monday at 1 p.m. All the more reason to have that notification bell hit and to be subscribed to this channel. Have a fun and safe weekend, everybody. Enjoy the NFL Combine, watching some Notre Dame players show out and put on their best showcase for some NFL GM. So until next time, that's Brian. I am the recently appointed VP of Irish Breakdown, Trevor Trowbridge. We will see you back here very soon.
By Trevor Trowbridge.
We'll see you back here very soon.
You got to put your sticker back on, man. Come on. Where's your VP badge?
Yeah,
put it back on. There you go. All right. Have an awesome weekend, everybody. We appreciate you. We love you. Have an awesome one. We'll talk to you soon.